This meeting, the Planning and Zoning meeting for October 18th, 2017 will now come to order. Please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Chairman Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shavir.
Here.
Secretary Chambers. Dr. Faison.
Yes.
Member Baker. Member Ritchie.
Here.
School Board Member Hare.
Here.
And we have quorum. Next is approval of minutes for October 4th, 2017. Is there any corrections or motion to
approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must first fill out the oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath card contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those wishing to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents you desire the Commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the recording secretary. Staff, has all items been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
And has anybody on the Commission had the opportunity to speak to anybody in the public about these items coming before us? Okay. Since we have 11 cards on item C, I'd like to see if the Commission would consider moving item C to the first item.
So moved. So moved.
Okay. Well, there you got it. So, in this way, we have a big audience here tonight. We've got 11 cards. What I would suggest is if somebody has already spoken on something, we've heard it. Everybody, if you want to come up and speak, please do. If you don't, or just let us know. So with that, staff, can we move item C to the first item? Rezoning number 3-217.
We can. I just wanted you to also be aware that I did receive a request from the applicant of item D to possibly consider that to be the first item.
Mr. Strickland or Grady?
It's the engineer, and Mr. Strickland is the applicant.
What would the Commission consider, since the first two line items are the glitch and there are more code changes, could we move that to the second line item? That'd be more acceptable.
Sorry, which did you want to? Which item?
I mean, I would recommend, I know that in the interest, I just don't know how that's going to go, so I don't know how any of them are going to go, really. But I mean, my point is that we do have 11 cards signed up on the one item, but that's for the Commission to decide.
D might be quick if there's only one call.
I would like to probably go ahead and move C and then move up D to the second item.
I would so move that we move
Okay.
to your wish.
Well, thank you. Is everybody in favor?
Yes.
Okay. So then, why don't we do that? What's the phrase? Well, it doesn't matter. So, if we could just start with item C, and then we'll.
What page are we on? Pages.
60.
56.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And the applicant is here, correct?
Yes.
All right. Great.
Go ahead. Okay. So this first item before you tonight is a rezoning petition number 3-2017. And so tonight there's a public hearing to consider this rezoning from the existing residential estate zoning district to a planned development zoning district, which is will be a zoning district that would be specific to this property only, with a master plan tied to it. The master plan is basically the sketch plat that we typically handle and bring before you, but now it's being brought before you as a public hearing through this process. The applicant, Mr. Jim Swan, on behalf of the owner, First Equity Development Group Incorporated, is requesting to rezone approximately 28 acres of the overall 70-acre property located west of Interstate 95, east of Carpenter Road, and north of Fox Lake Road. The request is to rezone from the residential estate, as I mentioned, to the planned development zoning with master plan for purposes of constructing a new residential subdivision with 70 single-family detached lots. The lots will be a minimum 70 feet wide and 115 feet deep. The City of Titusville Comprehensive Plan future land use designation is low-density residential, which allows a maximum residential density of 5 units per acre for a development potential of 130 residential units. Again, the applicant is only proposing a 70-lot subdivision. A planned development zoning requires 35% of the 26-acre development. I'm sorry, the 28-acre area of this property to be developed to be dedicated to open space. The applicant is proposing to do that. The remaining 44 acres of the property are wetlands, which will be dedicated to the St. Johns River Water Management District with an easement. Adoption of the planned development rezoning ordinance will approve the master plan with conditions. The conditions of approval are described in Exhibit A of the enclosed ordinance. I'll turn to that in a moment. This first reading of this rezoning ordinance is scheduled before the City Council at the next meeting this month, the 24th. Thank you. It has changed about 3 times, so forgive me. So again, on October 24th will be the first reading of the ordinance before City Council, and the advertised public hearing will be November 14th before City Council. So starting on page 58 of your packet is the first page of the staff report. I'll just describe that the property has a future land use, comprehensive plan, future land use designation of low density residential. That is not changing. The current zoning is residential estate, which allows right now a maximum density of 1 per acre. The applicant is requesting that be changed to a planned development zoning. And so it will maintain the same density that would be allowed maxed out in that land use. So again, the land use is not changing, it's just the zoning district. The surrounding properties are zoned open space and recreation to the north and to the south. East of the property is I-95, and west of the property across the street from Carpenter Road is another property zoned RE, residential estate. Just to give you some background on this property, in 2004 the property was annexed into the city, and that current low-density residential future land use was put on this property at that time. That same year, the property was rezoned to the RE, residential estate zoning, which again requires a maximum density of 1 unit per acre. In 2005, a plat was approved to construct what's called a cluster subdivision. And in the zoning district, the RE zoning district, there is an extra tool. So if you do not want to create a subdivision that has a density of 1 per acre, you can actually reduce the lots down to about 10,000 square feet. But you maintain the same density. And so that allows the applicant to conserve a lot of open space. So that was approved in 2005. The current rezoning proposal is to allow lots to be 8,000 square feet with 70-foot wide lot widths, provided 35% of the area is preserved for open space. The applicant is not utilizing a 5% open space credit as provided in the code. So they're not dedicating a public park. I did put in a table here that describes some of the setbacks compared to what was previously approved. In the last column under PD, I'm going to make a correction here. The lot size is being proposed to be 8,000 square feet as stated here. The lot width 70 feet wide. The minimum floor area for each of the homes will be 2,000 square feet. That is consistent as what was previously approved in the other columns you see here. The front setback is not being proposed as 25 feet as stated here. It's actually going to be 20 feet. And that's in the ordinance and also on the master plan. The rear setback of each of the lots will have a 20-foot setback, and the side setback will be 5 feet to the property line. Lot coverage will be 45%, and the open space will meet the 35% requirement within that 28 acres that is being rezoned from RE to PD. I'm going to refer you to, I'm going to skip around just a little bit just so you can see the overall design of this project, and I can describe a little bit what I've already talked about. I do have an image that I'd like to be brought up if possible that shows the overall layout of the master plan, that it will be tied with the rezoning. On the monitor in front of you, you'll see the layout of the subdivision with 70 single-family detached lots. It will have one access proposed off of Carpenter Road, and a significant area of the property will be dedicated for conservation with an easement to St. John's Water Management District. The layout you see here is relatively the same and similar to what was originally approved under the cluster subdivision tool back in 2005. I did give you a copy of that layout on your dais. You'll see the difference between that layout in 2005 and what is being proposed tonight, and the lots are being shifted further away from Fox Lake. So we believe that they are meeting the buffer requirements in the code for Carpenter and for Fox Lake and even for I-95. The layout of the project is on page 75 of your packet. I'll stop there for a moment and let's see if you have any questions.
What was the original count on the original development of units per acre?
On the
not units per acre of the whole development, I mean.
How many lots were proposed or approved at the time?
The original, yes.
I counted 71. Or 72, excuse me.
And this is?
And the one tonight is 70.
Okay. Dr. Faison?
I had, in going through this, I had placed why the plat was never recorded.
I can't answer the why. That was probably a reason that the applicant would probably have to explain why that wasn't recorded back then. As you recall, there was a recession, I guess 2007, 2008 when it started, so I don't know if they had some issues and then all of a sudden the recession started and they just couldn't move forward with it. Okay, I'll move on to the staff report again. So starting on page 59 of your packet, that's page 2 of the staff report. The staff found that the rezoning petition and master plan were consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. We've identified several policies where we believe they are consistent with. Moving on to page 60 of your packet, which is page 3 of the staff report. The project will be required to meet concurrency-related level of service standards prior to approval of the preliminary plat. If this is approved, this new zoning district will be applied to this property consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use that's currently on the property. Then the applicant will be required to submit a site plan in order to get a subdivision approved onto this property. And that's at that level is when you'll receive, well, on the administrative level, engineered drawings for the project. And it's at that time that we will address the need for a traffic study, the need for a water and sewer connections and the services being provided to the property, and all the other requirements as far as concurrency-related facilities, including stormwater and including solid waste. On page 61 of your packet, I'm going to just read number 7. On the bottom of the page, there are substantial reasons why the property cannot be used in the existing zoning district. The current RE zoning district does not allow lots to be 8,000 square feet. So the applicant has utilized a tool that is available in the city's land development code to go through a planned development zoning. The caveat is that they have to go through a public hearing process. And then the master plan will be tied to that zoning district. And so any subsequent changes to this layout will probably have to go through this process again. So the site plan that will be submitted later on and any engineered drawings for approval of the subdivision will have to be consistent with the layout you see here tied to the zoning district. On page 62 of your packet, which is page 5 of the staff report, under number 1, uses. When you propose a new planned development zoning district, you need to provide some listing of the types of uses that will be allowed within that new zoning district. In this case, the applicant has proposed single family as the primary use in this zoning district. A PD, a planned development, requires that the property be a minimum of 5 acres, and of course this property meets that standard. The staff, the PD will have direct access to Carpenter Road, which is designated as a collector road. Utilities will be addressed during the site plan review process. Parks and open space were addressed. The applicant is proposing the 35% open space on the property to meet the minimum 35% if you go through a PD process. And that 35% is being located on the 28 acres that's actually being rezoned. That doesn't even include the adjacent wetlands. So that this open space is in addition to the wetlands that are being dedicated through easement to St. John's. On page 63 of your packet, which is page 6 of the staff report, under master plan. This is being processed as a sketch plat. If you remember, all plats have to go through what's called a sketch plat process first. It's a one-page conceptual drawing that is brought before you and to City Council for approval. It's not a public hearing process. The difference here is that that process has been rolled into this PD master plan process. So it's basically they're doing the same thing. They're providing to you a sketch plat, but through a public hearing process. The property has to be under unified control, and it meets that standard as well. On the bottom of that same page, the recommendation to approve, the staff can recommend approval of the Plan Development Rezoning Ordinance and Carpenter Estates Master Plan with the conditions specified in Exhibit A of the ordinance. I'll refer you to page 65, and that is the Exhibit A of the rezoning ordinance. 65 of your packet. So this is what a standard format of a Plan Development Rezoning Ordinance. And you'll see that there will be a description at the top of the exhibit of the property, and then to kind of describe where this property is located. And then there will be a reference to an actual exhibit, which will be the layout and the master plan or sketch plat of the property, which I've shown to you on the monitors and is in your packet. On the bottom of page 65, you'll see the start of the permitted principal uses. So single-family detached dwelling units will be the principal use. Public and private parks and common recreational areas are also a permitted use in this new zoning district. And that's I just turned to page 66 of your packet. We've also worked with the applicant to determine what the permitted accessory uses will be in this zoning district. And we've addressed private swimming pools, spas, detached structures, home-based businesses as permitted by the city. Prohibited uses will be accessory dwelling units. There is going to be a minimum or maximum density, and that is 70 single-family residential lots. So to deviate from that would have to go through this process again. Critical design features. Open space improvements shall consist of a children's playground located in Tract D and a separate dog walk. Additional open space improvements, if any, shall be at the sole discretion of the developer. And we concurred with that. On number 1.7, preservation of environmentally sensitive lands and common open space areas, land use allocation table. The preservation tracts, that's 48 acres minimum, is going to be preserved through with easements of the wetlands to St. John's. Again, you'll see additional conditions that provide setbacks and zoning standards for the size of the lots, further down as part of the conditions of this zoning district. On page 66 of your packet. And so you'll see the minimum lot size, minimum lot width, open space requirement, principal building setbacks, and so on. On page 67 of your packet, it's the last page of the exhibit of conditions of the zoning district. Potable water, sanitary sewer, and solid waste disposal to be provided by and maintained by the City of Titusville. Stormwater conveyance system will be maintained by the HOA if the roadway is not publicly owned. The rear 10 feet of the lots may be used for stormwater treatment with dedicated drainage easements. And then I'm going to go to the last one, buffering and screening. Buffers are not required outside the proposed development area. There will be a 30-foot wide buffer in Tract A, which is the area adjacent to Fox Lake and Carpenter. And then there will be a 50-foot wide buffer in Tract C, which is the area immediately behind some of the lots that are closest to I-95. Both those buffers meet the code requirement. With that, I'll try and answer any questions you have about this. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. I guess it might be good, since we have so many speakers, it might be good to get out some of our preliminary questions to staff so that it may help answer some of their questions. Does anybody have questions of staff immediately, and then we can open it to the public? I have a couple questions then. And remarks, because this is primarily, this is good for the developer to know my line of thought so that they can add it to their presentation or address it. Originally, we went back when we first rezoned this, we went with residential estate. And isn't that 1 unit per 5 acres or 3 acres, or was it 1 acre per home? Is that right? 1 acre per home?
Yes.
So
One unit per acre.
All right. So when this concept first came to us years ago, I remember looking at it and it didn't fit the code. And so they took this property and they got really unique with it, and they said, look, we're going to use the calculations of the entire land, and we're going to go with this. I think this might have been the first cluster development.
Yes.
And so we agreed, fine, we will bring this in, we'll cluster it, and we'll put it all together, but we'll use all the calculations. And so now when we're coming in, I have a concern because, which I think you're familiar with, I think I have a pretty steady pattern of when you make a deal, you stay with that deal.
Right.
And so we allowed for this to, and it is their property, and I know that they want to develop it, but so we kind of fudged the numbers in the code to make it fit back then for a cluster development, although it didn't quite fit. So now we've solidified that development, and now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, that can be developed and they can do whatever they want with that particular thing, although it hadn't been platted, but it's still acceptable to do it that way. So now we're coming in, we're saying, look, we're going to change this to a planned development, which is, in my mind, substantially different because there's more negotiation with staff on changing after approval. And so I have that kind of concern. And so I want to put that out there to the developer right now. Not that but the other side of that, I want to say this isn't a far cry from what is originally being proposed. Although it's 2,000 square feet less. So I want to put that out there now so that everybody's aware of what I'm thinking. The second thing that I was thinking or looking at is, and this is directly for the city, is that I understand that they're handling the stormwater. The HOA will handle the stormwater. They're going to handle the connection to the water and sewer. They'll maintain the lift station. Is that correct?
The lift station, from what I understand, will be dedicated to the city, so we'll maintain it.
All right. So then that creates two questions. What I've seen in previous developments is that the development is maintaining the lift station and they also maintain their street, but they are closed communities. So why is it that we're shifting from the HOA not maintaining the streets and the lift station then, when this has been what we've done for, years?
I'm not familiar with the city.
There's a lot of developments maintain their own lift station. My development maintains their lift station as well. And
Right. My discussions with the with the Utilities Water Resources Department was that they would rather, they like to maintain the lift stations because when it's for subdivisions, because when it's left up to the association, they typically will not maintain it themselves, and so that becomes a problem through the system.
Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I do realize that each house pays taxes, and but I've just seen the pattern that the burden falls upon these new developments to handle these things. And this is kind of news to me when I've heard, we just had 2 developments come in that they're handling their own lift stations. They're building their own lift stations, they're handling them thereafter.
Are they subdivisions similar to this? Or?
They're all subdivisions.
Okay.
I mean, everything that comes in is a subdivision. Anything, really, I would say anything above.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but we can certainly find out.
The one on Sisson was one.
Yeah.
That was one of them. Although I don't know if I don't think they're gated, but I thought they maintain the roads and they do the lift station. And then we've had, not that I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, I'm just saying this was kind of a different take when I saw that in there, and that they had a homeowners association. And my issue is that the city has a limited budget, although this is a zoning thing, it's more of a question. And I don't see them maintaining the roads. It's very hard for them to maintain roads already. So,
just to answer that question about the roads, we have not been given direction from the applicant as to whether this will be a privately gated community or the road will be dedicated to the city.
But in your report, you said that it's not going to be a gated community.
Okay.
And so then I was thinking that was the threshold of where because it wasn't a gated community, it would be open to, it really doesn't matter, but I'm just throwing that out there. I thought this was a shift from what we normally do.
One of the conditions of the zoning ordinance is that the stormwater conveyance system will be maintained by the HOA if the roadway is not publicly owned. So I believe the applicant should probably answer this when they get a chance to speak, to answer whether the roadways will be dedicated to the city or it will be a gated community.
So at the same time, when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to do a guessing game, but it doesn't matter anyway. So, all right. So that's the only questions I have at this point. Are there any other questions of staff? Dr. Faison.
I was wondering how much.
Speaker.
Thank you. How much resident estate property we have left in the city of Titusville?
I couldn't give you a good acreage, but there's quite a bit of property, primarily up and down 95. There was and west of 95 as well. I do recall that there was a major annexation that happened back in 2005 of a lot of property and from the county, and the residential estate zoning was applied to it. In fact, there's another item before you tonight of a property that's currently zoned RE as well. That was at one point zoned RE as well. So
I think we're on the move. The finances are getting available, and we have companies, technical companies coming into the area, and we ought to have some land available for those who are in the high income. Going to be making pretty good money, and you're going to want to build nice homes.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. So let's open this to the public.
I don't know if the applicant would want to make a statement. It is a public hearing, so typically after staff make their presentation, the applicant's asked. Okay.
That's why I'm opening it to the public, which which then they come, so, if you'd like, I guess so, if you're the applicant. And was it Mr. Ward, or you're with him too?
Yeah, he's the engineer.
Yes.
I'm Jim Swan, and I've been doing business in this town since 1975. You may be familiar with some of the things I've done. Probably Laceda is the easiest one to remember. But your questions are on point, because we had to go through the same thought process. Private versus public. If there are private roads, i.e. gated communities, in a gated community, you can't have government take care of it because the public is restricted. If you don't gate the community, it's a public road, like all of Laceda, really. And not all of it. We did a couple of private gated communities in Laceda, if my memory serves me right. But anyway, we don't think there's a crime issue, which is usually when we gate it for the privacy thing. We think it's off the beaten path, and that there won't be a lot of people racing their cars through there or having a problem. So that's why we're leaning towards public streets. The lift station is up to the city utility department. I don't have a dog in that hunt. We're going to build it, and the homeowners are going to, if they say they don't want it, then the homeowners will take care of it. So it's not terribly important to us. It is important to us for the change which you brought out. And there's two really good reasons. But one is the original subdivision, that the plat was never recorded, and we are not the owners of the land. So we're not the same people that did that design. Frankly, I would never have done that design. That design had about 6 acres of wetland impacts. I didn't see any need for that. The market today is not for 125-foot wide lots. That was typically what we did when we built ranch houses. And today we build mostly 2 stories, much more compact houses in this kind of price range. People don't want a lot of land to take care of. The people that we sell for are going to be, we anticipate this market to be professionals, engineers coming into these projects, and they work hard, they want to come home, and they don't want an acre of land to take care of. I built Wendover Farms, so I know there are people that like a lot of land. I sold a lot of lots in that area. But, so what we looked at is from the other driving economic thing for us is the price of housing in Titusville. You have to, we can't, 125-foot lot would be not feasible. If we did that much frontage for the roads, it would cost so much that our houses would have to be up at $500,000 range. And we don't think there's a significant market in that range. We're looking at the $300,000 to $400,000 price range. By making the lots a little narrow, it's a lot less expensive, and therefore we can get the houses in that price range and build the houses that we build. If anybody's driven through the great outdoors and seen the houses we build, that's the quality we try to put into them. So that's the answer to the 2 questions that you raised. It's environmental issues drive me to always stay out of important places and try to be as conservation oriented as I can be. But the economics happen to fit perfectly with that. And otherwise, I'll let y'all ask questions, or I'll just defer and see what other issues people raise. Is that okay?
Yes. Are there any questions of Mr. Swan? I guess not right now, but you'll have an opportunity to come back after everybody else comes up. Mr. Ward?
Yes, ma'am. Name's Lois Ward, and I'm the one that prepared the sketch plan that's a part of the application. And as the staff pointed out earlier, the project has not received final engineering yet. The design will be done after this, so we know what to engineer to. The plan, as Mr. Swan stated, was main difference is a vast reduction in the amount of wetlands that are being disturbed. So it's also point out that the buffer is on all the perimeter, and the existing vegetation will be preserved, and with the exception of the entrance road off of Carpenter, most folks won't even notice that the subdivision is there because it'd be a complete enclave, if you will. We've heard there may be concerns about flooding of adjacent properties. I can assure you that the City of Titusville has reviews designs very thoroughly and make sure that other properties are not impacted, as well as it's regulated by the St. Johns River Water Management District, and those calculations are done. The plan, if you remember, most of the stormwater is going to go to the center portion, which will be the main stormwater retention with a pop off or a bleed off, if you will, that will go into the wetlands, and then there's a outfall pipe under Carpenter Road that goes on to the west. But that will be a weir installed there, and will control those waters, and it'll seep out gradually over time. And that's the weir that lower, and then as the water rises, then the discharge increases. So those designs are monitored and reviewed and approved by the city as well as St. John's. And myself and my firm have been doing business here since '76, and I don't think we ever had a project that flooded anybody else or any adjacent properties. Thank you. Any questions? I'd be glad to try to address them.
Are there any questions, Mr. Ward? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can we have the first card on this, please?
Danielle Bowden.
Hi, Danielle Bowden. I'm the realtor for Mr. Swan on this project. And I just wanted to express that we have done the analysis for the market, and we have a demand for this lot size and these homes. And I have so much appreciation for his consideration for preservation. My focus is sustainable real estate, and Mr. Swan gives the most consideration for the ecology of the program, of the project, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Zach Bowden.
Good evening. Yes, I am also a realtor, part of a team with my wife on the project, and my statements and thoughts would pretty much mirror that of my wife in terms of the environmental responsibility of the project with minimal impact, to create a community that's has as much of a chance of providing a nice home where there's still a lot of land that can be left untouched. I appreciate the time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Cole Oliver.
Good evening. My name's Cole Oliver. I have several commercial development projects here in front of the city of Titusville that are either currently in the stages of being approved by this board or city council, and also that are forthcoming. And I just wanted to say that I'm excited about the potential for this project coming along with some, nicer homes and higher end units going in, and at the same time preserving the environmental aspects that are out there in that aspect of the county while reducing the overall intensity. So I just wanted to speak my support of a fellow developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is going quicker than I anticipated. I mean, when you see 11 cards on an item, so you're expecting. We'll get there. Next card, please.
Nathan Montgomery.
Hi there. I'm also a realtor, not in the same company or related or part of the project, but just for the record. But I do agree with Danielle that it definitely is a needed price range for the community. When you look at the market and the as you spoke to, the groups that are coming in, engineers, people that are looking for that type of size of home or that price range of home. But I do also like that they didn't really change anything as far as, saying, hey, let's shrink these lots and make it, 200 homes. They said, let's keep it the same, let's protect the environment, but still provide a good quality home, a good size home in a range that's needed in the area. So just wanted to add my 2 cents.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Donald Page.
Mr. Page.
Got it.
I'm not going to give that to him.
Okay.
I'd like back what you don't give away. There you go. Yeah, you were in a hurry. I'm going to slow you down now.
Okay. I'm not in a hurry, but I'm here to. My issue is I just didn't want everybody here waiting all night long. So.
All right.
But I'm not in a hurry.
I enjoyed your comments about the original agreement because I was involved in the original agreement. I worked long and hard with the city and those involved in order to get what we've got in an agreement of being able to put 70 plots in an area that's zoned for 1 per acre. And the cluster idea we came up with was a solution to our problem. And we agreed to that. Now we're in the process of changing our agreement. And I enjoyed what you said because that's exactly right. Now, I've made some comments. I'm here talking for the citizens that live on Thal Road. We abut the northern part of that property. I can go through these things if you want as quickly as I can, but they get very detailed. First item, there's 6 items that we're worried about or concerned about, and number 1 is why are we changing this? We have not heard or read or seen why we need to change this RE to PD. To us, that reduces the quality of a subdivision in the middle of RE zoning area. And that doesn't make sense. And it appears to us, as the residents, that we should be able to work with this developer, and I think this is a good developer, and I think it's a good developer for this area, that we should be able to work with this developer under an RE consideration of cluster zone and be able to work with him and deal with helpful through the St. John's and the city to be able to mitigate the kind of impacts that it looks like it could make to some of the wetlands. We already have wetland impact even with the PD, so there's some mitigation already involved. So it appears to me like we, the homeowners, can work with the developer and accomplish the RE cluster zone capability and have a better lot, a 125-foot lot wide. I'm an engineer, retired, and if I was coming in here today and going to work for one of our new companies, I would not want to try to build or buy a house on a 70-foot lot. It just squishes it down, and I have to listen to the next door neighbor flush his toilets. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about zero lot line type things, California style. And I don't think we're there yet. So let me go on through this thing right quick, okay? Number 1, we would like to leave it RE cluster. That's our request. 2 is we're concerned about the potable water supply. I don't know if many of you realize we citizens bought and paid for the water line that runs from Fox Lake Road up to Thal Road Supply and all of Rambling Acres west. We paid for it out of our pocket, every penny. And the owner of this property, when he was asked how many drops he was going to require in order to pay his share of this water line, he got 16. Whatever it is I have here. I wrote it down, 16 drops. So he paid for 16 drops to this line. I paid for 3 lots. I had 3 lots. I paid almost $10,000. Now, The second item that we're dealing with, and like I said in here, we're not concerned right now with who, what, and why on the water line costs. We're wanting to know, since our water pressure is already not as good as it should be, what the effect is of adding 70 more houses onto this water line. And the question is going to begin about the next proposal, which is all the lots down on the south end of Fox Lake Road. This is also going to be an impact. They're all going to want to get on the water line. Now, the second item I have there is, and I didn't find this out until I was doing study on what's going on here. This water line is backed up or supplied by a 12-inch cast iron pipe that was laid underneath I-95 back before, I'm sure, I-95 was ever built. And this cast iron pipe and the cast iron pipe that ran all the way out to Fox Lake was how the city supplied water to Fox Lake Park. All the pipe from the interstate out west has been replaced. We still have a 12-inch cast iron pipeline, got to be 50 plus years old, that's under heavier loads, wider highway, and we're sitting on a time bomb. That water supply supplies the entire southwest area of Titusville. Okay? So I need to get that word to City Council. I've already talked to the water people here, the city water people, and they know about it, and they're worried about it. They've told me, yeah, we know it's there, and we don't know exactly what to do about it. One of the solutions to this is there is a northern line that comes from Carpenter Road down, and the southern line comes from Fox Lake up. If we could get the city to join the two together, we now have a backup system in case that line collapses. The next thing that we have in a concern is the water runoff. And I've lived here 38 years with my property backed up against that. And this year we've had over 64 inches of rain this year. And our average waterfall rain here in Titusville is about, 53, 52 inches. So that's how much extra water we've had already this year. We've had 7 inches this month. And I have rain gauges, water gauge. I have a weather system on my house. I monitor wind and rain and everything. I have a pond at the back of my property. I can see what the water table is constantly. And right now we have standing water in parts of our yard that I can't mow, my neighbors can't mow because of the excess water that's out there on that land. Now that water ponds on there. It's the standard water table, and it rises that much, and it's sitting there ponding right now. And it'll stay that way as long as we have these rains to keep it up. Now, we don't know from what we see how in the world they're going to get rid of all that water. That's not going to make any difference whether it's a PD zone or an RE zone. The second item we have, or the last item, the fifth item we have, is the traffic pollution. One of the staffs made the comment that the capacity segment for Fox Lake Road at that point is 15,600 vehicles a day. And my comment is that might seem satisfactory to some traffic engineer, but it's a terrible number to the local homeowner who has to navigate the congestion, especially when you consider what it might be like crossing I-95 and the light at South Lake. Now, when we had damage to I-95, everybody finally realized what a bottleneck that is if you can't get over 95. And we were out for about a year as they were repairing that bridge. And we had to drive all the way to Garden Street to get anywhere we wanted to go. So that's a serious element involved, and that is traffic over that particular one route. All right, that completes the comments that I have here from the local people. I also have comments, and by the way, one of the things they are concurring with or agreeing with is the comments that I submit as well. But my comments are against the proposal, the actual submittal itself. And in listening to what's being said here, I may much misunderstand is this a master plan or is this not a master plan? Is this a submittal? If I read some of the things that I see and what's been given here, staff has said that this is a master plan. If you read the very first statement here, where is it? Yeah, see, if you look at report to council, and this is the old page 87. It's I don't know what it is. The new. You guys have reprinted this and put it out on email so many times they changed page numbers. But this is a report to council, and what it says is conduct a public hearing to rezone property from RE zoning district to a planned development zoning with a master plan. I interpret that to mean this is a master plan. If that's not the case, I have totally misunderstood what it is that's being submitted. And all my comments go back to what staff has said concerning this application as a master plan. If I read the applicant's request, it's to rezone the property to Plan PD with master plan. Is this a master plan? I have that question to ask of staff.
According to the code and what was submitted, it meets this test for a master plan. So yes, it is.
Okay. So now that we've
the process was a preliminary master plan. This isn't the final plan.
If you recall, we revised that process. If you recall, we used to have what's called a plan unit development zoning that required 3 levels of master plans to be approved. And we went through a process last year to streamline that process or make it more efficient because it wasn't working for the city. And we got city council approval to make those changes. So what you see here tonight is that revised process. So what you do is you submit an application to rezone the property, similar to how you did it last time, and you submit a plan to be attached to that zoning ordinance, similar to how we did it last time. The difference is now we ask for more information up front. So that's what you see here tonight.
But what I'm saying is I recall the argument was that we didn't want to make developers upfront all that cost for an application that could be denied. So we said we'll scale it back. We'll give you basically a good idea for the zoning, and then it would come back in. I mean, you know this is your job, but I don't look at these as the final plan. And because if it is, then we would have to say it doesn't work.
Well, what you see here is substantially the same as what you would approve for a final master plan in a prior process.
Yes, but I'm saying but it's not the final.
If this is approved, this zoning ordinance would be placed on that property.
It's for the zoning, not
with the master plan attached to it.
Master plan
That's
is
it.
That's it.
Sir.
That's my problem. Is that master plan establishes the zoning. If we establish the zoning, we can't change it.
Because the argument, the issue I have with this, and this is coming from staff, is a lot of times we have the issue where we're told the issue before you is zoning, everything else can be arranged to fit.
It's no different than how you had it before. You had a land use change with the rezoning happening at the same time with a master plan. That's how it worked last time. That's how it worked.
But
in the prior process.
if we found an issue with the master plan, and we said the master plan doesn't fit, then technically we could say the zoning doesn't fit either.
Right, that's what you're saying. And so and then if they need to make changes to it, they'd have to go back through the process again.
Because I'm just saying that in the past it seems that we say, well, we'll fix it later. And so I mean, Chelsea, you had something you wanted to add?
The only change that I'd like to just further clarify, as Brad has stated, we streamlined the process, and there is no longer something that you call a final master plan. There's no longer something that you call a preliminary master plan. There is just one master plan, which is adopted as a exhibit or a portion of the ordinance that you would be recommending your approval for tonight.
So if there's a major change on that, how do you...
This process would be gone through in its entirety in order to change that master plan. So
But
what is
is it-
adopted by council is the final, but we don't call it a final because there's
What I'm
no
getting at
preliminary.
is then, if that's the case, then city staff should be going through this with a fine comb.
Which is what I did, sir. Exactly what I did.
Yes, but I'm just saying that my understanding is that we were not doing that, so the developers didn't have as much funding up front.
Chairman Williams, let me just ask, what exactly would we be asking in addition to what we've already asked for tonight for a plan to be attached to this zoning ordinance, similar to how we've done it before in the past? I mean, what else would we ask?
Your own documents will tell you that. Now I went through and I found the references in the documents that say what's required in a master plan, and that's what's missing. And that's exactly what I've got you in front of you there. Is everywhere that I've found where there's a violation, and most of it has to do with concurrency. There's also a requirement
Right,
a concurrency management plan is there, a storm management plan.
Right, and that's why, and that's kind of why I shouldn't be engaging in both conversations, but I kind of do want the question, because under a master plan, you do have all those aspects. You do have them. You have your stormwater, you have your curbing, you have.
No, sir. No, you do not. You're talking about engineering level drawings, which happens during our site plan process. So that has never changed. You know, that level of detail happens during engineering review, our site plan review.
Okay. All right, so let's just move on. So if you would, I guess your questions from staff were, you had two questions, and one of them was the barrier wall.
Yeah, I have some specifics here. The first part of this has to do with addressing all of the comments staff has made and how they don't cover the requirements of the master plan. Then at the end, I had certain questions that were not related to the master plan per se. There were questions about in this publication. There's a statement and this is the area that I wanted to really address, is the ordinance itself. Statements like the drainage easement is subject to, as described in official records, book 6104 at page 1143. What is that? You're getting ready now to sign an ordinance change, and yet there's a thing in here that says subject to, and it doesn't tell you what it is. And I tried to download what it is, and I couldn't get it downloaded. So I don't know whether staff knows what that is. Has anybody's looked at it?
Question, sir. I'm not following your question.
All right. In your Exhibit A.
The legal description?
The ordinance. Okay. At the bottom of the first page, reference right above where it says 1.3, right above that, where it says subject to. Right there. What is that? Do you staff know what that is?
There is this is referring to a drainage easement that's on the property. So this is something that the applicant could probably describe to you exactly what that is.
Doesn't the city staff know what it is?
We would address those kind of things during the site plan review, during our engineering review.
Well, see, you're getting ready to sign off or propose or send forward and approve a ordinance.
Well, his handout.
He's referring to the legal description that was attached to the zoning ordinance. That's page 65 of your packet.
Yeah, all of my comments are against the packet. All of my comments are against the packet.
Okay.
And this is against the ordinance itself, Exhibit A.
That is a legal description that was provided to us by the applicant to describe the property. That language is part of that legal description. So this property, when it goes through a plat, is going to be completely re-subdivided. So all easements will have to be reviewed. Any existing easements will have to be reviewed and maybe revised as part of that plat process, that site plan review process anyway.
Which is normal.
Yeah.
I mean, that is very true.
But it's part of the master plan, and it is an ordinance that you're getting ready to send forward. And I would have the same question to City Council when I'm standing there. Is Mr. City Council, what is that?
Excuse me?
Sir?
Say that again.
I said, when I stand before City Council, when you send us forward, I'll be going through the same thing. I'll be asking the same question. Why isn't it explained what this is in this ordinance?
I would defer to them.
Okay. All right. We do not want home-based businesses in our area at all, even in PD. It decreases the value of the land. Authorized home-based businesses decreases land value. Now, I know people have them and they sneak them, and as long as it's under wrap and quiet and nobody knows about it, they go right with it.
But I think the applicant did put in there, and I'm not wanting to argue about it, I thought they put in there, or I think they deferred to city code on that, didn't they?
Yes.
So it's really up to city code would determine that. And I think that's what they put in their application.
So a neighbor to somebody that has a home business that has trucks and trailers and whatever has to go to city council and say, look, this neighbor won't fix my problem. And
It's, well, I mean, I would defer to the legal department, but I thought they've been opening it up more so to everybody, but haven't you, or have you not?
No, sir, we have not. We've had the same standards in existence for several years. We haven't made any revisions to them. What I can tell you, a home-based business, and this is up to you. I mean, if you want to recommend making it prohibited, that's certainly fine, or making some restrictions, that's your recommendation. It was something that's standard and allowed in all of our single-family zoning districts. We wanted to make sure that was clear here. Otherwise, it can be removed. Just so you know, a home-based business is technically an office only. You can't have retail coming out of that building, that home rather. You can't even have storage going on in that property. So we do ask any applicant who's wanted to open up a home-based business, which would be primarily an office, retail office at their home, where people are not showing up there, to sign a disclosure with the city stating that they will follow all the conditions, including no storage of equipment.
I'm just saying, I thought in years past it was very difficult to have a home-based business, and I thought that the city opened it up. Well, and so so I've only been here for maybe 3.5 years, so maybe prior to me, maybe that's probably what you're referring to. Maybe there was some change that happened. So, but I thought it was, so basically what you're saying is the city allows it currently. Correct. And in your neighborhood, the city allows it. Where you currently live, your neighbors could do that as well. Is that, or are you in, I'm not thinking you're in an association.
no, we're homeowners.
All right, so does your homeowners association ban it?
Yeah, no home-based business.
Okay.
In an RE area, I don't know why you'd ever want home-based businesses, because they can be detrimental to the property value, especially if people find out and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to buy that guy's house, he got a home-based business next door. I can understand it in some types of areas, but I cannot understand it in residential estate, 1 acre plus lots. And in this case, we're accommodating a 10,000 square foot lot to get the same size home on it. But when you reduce that lot down to 70 by 115, and you got to give 10 foot of that property away to drainage easement, so you got 105 foot to deal with. And I tried to, like I said here, I tried to draw a piece of paper how I'd lay out a house on a 70-foot lot, a 2,000 square foot house on a 70-foot lot, 5-foot side clearances. So I laid that out, and you got 10 foot off the back, and your house has got to be 33 feet if you're going to get the whole thing on there. Of course, you can go second floor and put part of it on up, part of it up above. but you have hardly any backyard left, and you got to give 10 feet of whatever you got away to easement, so you can't build on it either. So that's kind of things that we looked at as to why we think this is demeaning to this piece of land that could be done the way it was originally planned. It could be done. And working with the designer, with the builder, and working with the St. John's, and working with the city, and working with the people, I think we can come up with a plan to put 10,000 square foot lots on there like it was originally attempted. All right. I had a couple other questions here. What's the height requirement?
The height requirement?
Yeah.
Falls under
35 feet.
Yeah.
35 feet? Okay, you don't have it on here. See, that's the reason why. You just say height.
Right. Anything that's not addressed in the zoning ordinance would fall back on the underlying zoning. So what the zoning ordinance is doing is addressing any changes from our code.
Now, PD?
So anything that's not addressed would fall back on our regular land development code.
You don't want a PD code?
I'm sorry?
On PD? PD is 50 feet.
I'm not sure which PD you're referring to, sir.
Well, that's because zoning is to go to PD here.
Okay. What's okay? I'd have to see what you're looking at. What section of the code are you?
I can go back to 39. What is it? Where's PD? 33. What? That tells you what a PD code is. In all instances, maximum building code height shall be 50 feet. Hey, I went through this thing with a fine-tooth comb.
It sounds like
my trouble is getting through all this rigmarole that represents the city ordinances. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why I went through this, is because they don't even come close to satisfying a master plan submittal. And when I ask if this is a master plan, because everything alludes it's a master plan, then it doesn't meet the city's requirements for a master plan. Stormwater drainage, stormwater management, that's so important. Another thing it doesn't meet is the concurrency. It doesn't even address concurrency requirements. And I got lots, I could go in here. Do you know what the county requires in the concurrency? See, there's a state law about concurrency for this stuff.
I'm very familiar with that.
Okay, well, the concurrency is supposed to be done and submitted to P&Z.
And I will tell you the previous project was.
So that's not here now.
I can answer the maximum height statement. So in the plan development zoning, building height must comply with any design standards or other plans or policies provided for in the area of the development, or must be compatible with the surrounding existing development pattern in the area. In all instances, the maximum building height shall be 50 feet. So you are correct. However, we would say that because of compatibility with the surrounding development pattern, which is residential, we would say the maximum height is 35 feet. If we want to make that clear, we can certainly do that in this ordinance.
That's what you should do in this thing. It should say height 35 feet. If that's what you're really trying to say. I could go through all my comments if you wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary.
I think we have a good understanding of what you're saying, and I honestly appreciate you made some very good points. I mean, I do like the master plan brings up several questions for me. And then I definitely appreciate the catching of the 50 feet, because even I was thinking it was 35.
Well, if this is a master plan, then it does not come close to meeting the master plan for a PD. My recommendation is that you disapprove this PD request and that we go seek some kind of a way of working with the RE cluster.
Staff.
Okay. Go ahead.
Right now we're just working on the rezoning of the property. A lot of his concerns will be addressed in further review when you do more of the planning, like you said, the site plan and everything.
Well, again, understand, approval of this ordinance will also approve the master plan attached to that ordinance. Right. So it'll approve the conceptual drawing layout that you see in your packet.
Do you feel that the master plan is complete?
I do, yes, because a lot of the issues that we addressed with Water Resources Department, Public Works, our engineer, were stated to us that they would be specifically in details addressed through the engineering review process. For example, I did speak with the city engineer, and he stated that he would require a traffic study during the site plan review process because it just automatically trips a requirement for a traffic study. So something like that didn't need to be put into as a condition of this ordinance. Water Resources provided to us information that they believe that they have sufficient capacity, and they provided that to us in an email, which is part of the record. And they have the water mains and sewer mains. They're adjacent to the property which the applicant can connect to. That, again, the details of how that connection happens is dealt with during the engineering phase, the site plan review phase. I appreciate Mr. Don Page's thoroughness, and I really do appreciate that. But I have to say that in his argument that we should go back to the original design and layout, you certainly could do that. You can ask for increased lot sizes through this process to go back to something similar to what was originally approved in 2005 if you want to ask the applicant to reconsider this. But let me just point this out to you. The difference between what was approved in 2005 and what is being considered tonight, we feel like there's going to be less of an impact to the wetlands with this design. We also feel like the runoff issue will be less of an issue as a result of that with this design. Although the lots are going to be a little smaller than what is originally proposed in our other single-family zoning districts, such as, if you recall, the R1C, B, and D, or I'm sorry, A. The smallest single-family lot size that we have in our most intense zoning districts is the R1C, has lot sizes of 6,500 square feet. So we felt like this was still maintaining the rural character that was originally proposed with the cluster tool that was allowed in the code and utilized even back in 2005. So we feel like this project has less of an impact than even what was originally approved in 2005. So Mr. Page has asked for a reconsideration, maybe going back to that same one, but staff is not seeing why. We can certainly address all of Mr. Page's concerns and questions that he's outlined here, and we can provide that information to you.
No, and Mr. Ward, I would say address that in the rebuttal.
Sure.
Okay. All right, let's move on, unless anybody else. Okay. Can we get the next card?
Margaret Kinslow.
We're going to take a different road for a little while. When I was going through the paperwork on the internet, I ran across Brevard County's planning and zoning administrative policies. It's 5 pages, and on every page of this, they reiterate that even policy number 3 says compatibility with existing or proposed land uses shall be a factor in determining where a rezoning or any application involving a specific proposed use is being considered. Okay. The next page says whether the proposed use would cause a material reduction in the value of existing abutting lands or approved development, whether the proposed use or uses are consistent with an emerging or existing pattern of surrounding development as determined through an analysis of historical land use patterns, actual development over the immediately preceding 3 years, and development approved within the past 3 years but not yet constructed. Another one in Administrative Policy 4 says the proposed use must not materially and adversely impact an established residential neighborhood by introducing types of intensity of traffic And I won't read the rest of it because that's what I was concerned about when I read that. This one says, this is policy 7. Proposed use or uses shall not cause or substantially aggravate any substantial drainage problem on surrounding properties or significant adverse and unmitigatable impact on significant natural wetlands, water bodies, or habitat for listed species. Policy 8 says the character of the land use of the property surrounding the property must be considered. And it goes through several others. And then it says the compatibility of the proposed zoning classification or conditional use with existing land use plans for the affected area. So, and I think there are 4 more on this page. The character of the land use of the property surrounding the property being considered must be, it says the Planning and Zoning Board shall recommend to the Board of County Commissioners the denial or approval of each application for amendment to the official zoning maps based upon a consideration of the following factors. The character of the land use of the property surrounding the property being considered. 2, the change in conditions of the land use of the property being considered and the surrounding property since the establishment of the current applicable zoning classification, special use, or conditional use. 3, the impact of the proposed zoning classification or conditional use on available and projected traffic patterns, water and sewer systems, other public facilities and utilities, and the established character of the surrounding property. 4, the compatibility of the proposed zoning classification or conditional use with existing land use plans for the affected area. And I think there's one more. Nope, that's it. And it's stated over and over again that they were there to protect the homeowners that were already there, the established neighborhoods that were already there. That was their purpose for doing this. When I went to the internet and looked at the Titusville Planning and Zoning, there were 2 paragraphs that baseline, it just said, we're here to give you information if you need it. They didn't say anything about the Planning and Zoning Council being here to protect us and our land values and our lifestyle that we are used to in our neighborhood by bringing in other zonings that are not congruent with ours. In addition to that, the staff made these comments about the proposed, and I know, and I want you to know right up front that I'm not against the developer developing this land. I am not against that. But these were your staff comments, and that's why I did this little research project that I'm presenting to you this evening. The first staff comment was, the development standards and the allowable uses within the proposed PD zoning district are similar to the other development in proximity to the property subject of this request, and the rezoning is not likely to cause depreciation of nearby property values. I contest that statement. I'd like them to prove that. The second one was that the application is consistent with zoning in the area. It is not. PD is not consistent. It is only RE out there. And the third statement is the property is primarily surrounded by large lot, single-family subdivisions and conservation areas. If they had added that these large lots were an acre or more, then I would accept that statement. But when they did not say that the large lots were an acre or more, then that invalidated that statement. So I did a little project.
Thank you.
Would you like one? Mm-hmm. I brought you one.
Oh, Did you still want to speak? No.
Can we get a copy of the handout, please?
I don't have any more. Somebody else have to get.
Please continue.
Okay, because they are putting 70 houses on this 73 acres, I took the 70 closest houses to this development, and I did the stats on them. All but 2 of the 70 houses were built before this decision was made in 2005. So it was an established neighborhood. It wasn't that a few houses had been built and the rest of them hadn't been built yet, and the acreage was just lots. This was an established neighborhood, an RE neighborhood, with 1 acre or more and 2,000 square feet or more per house, okay? When I added up all of the acres, if you'll turn over, down at the bottom, all of these acres came out. And when I averaged how much would be the average acreage per house of these 70 houses, it was 1.945 acres, almost 2 acres per house in those 70 houses. Some were more, some were less, but that was the average. I averaged out the square feet of living area, and it averaged out to be 2,817. I averaged out the sub area where you add all of the garage and the porches and all of that, and that was 4,171. Then when you go down and you do a comparison of what the staff from Planning and Zoning said was comparable neighborhood to what was going in, this is the comparison. The lot size up here that the average would have would be 84,724.2 square feet. We have agreed to 10,000 square feet, which is a huge difference from what is out there. The established neighborhood had to have 1 acre per house, but people purchased much more than that and built much larger than 2,000 square foot homes. So the established neighborhood has to be considered when you're doing zonings, not what is the minimum requirement, but what really is the neighborhood. Okay? Now they're coming back and proposing 8,000 square feet. 8,000 versus 84,724. Okay? Then the living area under AC, the average was of the neighborhood is 2,817. The cluster zoning was 2,000 square feet, and this was under AC. And we have the terminology of 2,000 square feet of flooring. I have asked 2 specialists who work with developments. They are professional men. And they said that they have seen the 2,000 square feet of flooring to include the flooring in the garage and in the porches. And they said we cannot go on 2,000 square feet of flooring. It has to be stated living area under air conditioning. So please watch that in this one and in all the future ones that you have. So what we have here that they're proposing we change this to is 1,600 square feet or less if they have a porch or something that has a flooring in it. So that's not air conditioned. And the sub areas are, we're talking about over 4,000 square feet compared to 2,000. So even if it is a 2,000 square foot house that is being built, they're still well below what the average house is out there. So I said all that to say this. The Planning and Zoning Department needs to not make statements unless they've done a thorough study of the neighborhood they're describing as being similar to the one being proposed. Then I want everybody to know that we are not happy about that. We are happy about them helping keep the wetlands safe. And we're happy about that, and I was very happy that they are dedicating this to St. John's because it could not stay in their possession. We've had problems with land being kept in the possession of the homeowners association or whatever, and they could actually put houses on it after it's been dedicated and all of that. So we need to make sure that that's done. If this property is zoned PD, it will have 8,000 square foot lots, which is not congruent with our neighborhood. The cluster itself is not at all similar to our neighborhood, but we are happy to have the wetlands protected and are not fighting that. But we protest when the PD zoning allows even smaller lots than the previous plan. We want 10,000 square foot lots and 2,000 square feet of living area under air conditioning. The 2,000 square feet that they want to cut out of the lot is actually the size of the house they want to put on it. So when we are talking about runoff, if they have 10,000 square feet with a 2,000 square foot house and a driveway, then they have removed that, and that is all watershed going down to what's left. If they reduce it 2,000 square feet of what land will percolate, I think it's called percolate the water through to the aquifer, then I don't know where this water is going to go. I really don't. The people's backyards, if they have that 10 feet and then it's 10 feet lower for the water to accumulate, they're going to have water standing all the time, it sounds like to me. But anyway, they would be cutting the with the 1/5 of the house. If they had the 8,000 square feet, it would be 1/5 of the house to the land to the house plus the driveway. Okay, and we're reducing that to 1/4 of the land plus the driveway. So I stand against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Randy Forrest.
Hello. My name's Randy Forrest. I don't really want to give my address because I'm a retired law enforcement officer, but I live close to the area, and I'm glad this is going to. You save me a lot of time, and you save me a lot of time. So I'm against the proposal for most of the same reasons that these two have already spoken. One of the things that are the most important thing to me at this point, because I don't live that close to the area, is property values, and that's kind of been addressed. I'm going to go ahead and give you a problem and hopefully a simple solution that can help out property values. One of the things in my previous employment is to drop a property value down to zero is having a sex offender move into your residence or close to your residence. I've got an example I can give you and maybe a solution that we can work. This is all public record. Offender living in Fawn Lake. He bought his property prior to the clubhouse and tennis court being built. Okay? Sex offender. Because he bought that property prior to the clubhouse and tennis court being built, it was within 1,000 feet. A sex offender or sex predator is not to live within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, park, playground, or place where children congregate. So this offender was grandfathered in and allowed to live there, close to a clubhouse, tennis court, park. Okay, this can easily be alleviated if I noticed on page 61, I believe, the plan. That's talking about the depreciation of values of property. And then on the 63 of the page, the part about parks and open spaces. And that's the staff comment on that. And but when I go to the page 66, where it says critical design features, it says open space improvements shall consist of children's playground located in tract D, or a separate dog walk, and shall be the sole discretion of the developer. Well, when I look on the plat at tract D, I don't see anything about a park or playground or anything like that. I don't know if I'm missing that or if I don't see it. My simple solution to this problem is if the developer could take a lot or an area and place some type of park on it. Now, the definition per the Department of Corrections for a park would be a open space area with a permanent structure. That permanent structure could be as much as a racquetball court or a park picnic table, as long as it's a permanent structure. It's not a very expensive request. If it's in the middle or somewhere around, as I look at the plat, it'll easily be within 1,000 feet to keep any sex offenders or future sex offenders from moving into that area. Okay? So I would, if this proposal is approved, I would hope that you could learn from this and maybe even future developments that placing a park into your plat prior to someone moving in will keep a sex offender out of that area and out of the area of the surrounding areas of 1,000 feet. And that's about all I have.
Can we go back? You said that was on page 61?
No, 61 was the I had that highlighted as talking about depreciation, not likely to cause depreciation of the property and the value. So I was just pointing out that there is a way that your property can devaluate quickly if a sex offender moves into the residence. But mainly on 63 is the staff comment about the open spaces.
Okay, 63
and the parks.
Where? All right. I had a question for staff real quick. So, can't you have an open space park? They, what do they call those now? They call them passive park?
A passive park? What?
Could they do a passive park? Declare it a passive park?
The applicant is meeting the minimum open space requirement, so it's up to them to provide. They'd like to put a park in there.
I'm just saying that I thought that there's such a thing as a passive park now, and so if that falls within that, I mean, it's open space no matter what. But obviously,
well, to
it
keep
is
a
up to
sex
the
offender out, it would require a permanent structure. Like I said, you can bolt a picnic table into the ground or bolt a park bench into the ground and put a sign out front. It could be Sean Williams Park. It doesn't make a difference what that is. But as long as there's a permanent structure parked there, it will keep sex offenders out of the area.
Well, I'm sure that's good information for the developer.
And for you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Howard Schaefer.
Oh, Howard, nothing. I'm sorry. I passed.
Okay.
Phyllis Schaefer.
No, there's enough talking.
Dwight Thornton.
Yeah, I'm against the small lots and small houses.
Yeah, sir. Unless you want to pass, you got to come up to. Okay.
Y'all can't.
We got the gist.
You have to speak into the microphone.
Oh, I see. My name is Dwight Thornton, and I am against the proposal because of the small lot lines and the smaller houses. I think it's totally different than the existing area. But I'll pass because I think most everything has already been covered.
Thank you.
Do you understand what I said?
Crystal, I do have a question though. So if they were to increase this 2,000 square feet, would this be acceptable? Each lot?
You mean increase it from 2,000 to 4,000?
No, increase it from 8,000 to 10,000. Would that be then acceptable? The lot size. And because a lot of that hinges on the lot size. If they were to do that, and that's why I'm asking that. If they were to increase this by 2,000 square feet, eat up some wetlands, basically just have to mitigate more.
Yes.
As well as, and I'm not trying to argue for or against.
Well, that'd be much better, but
a bigger house with more
I'm just
surfaces.
thinking. I live on over a 1 acre lot, and just going from the 0 lot, the 70-foot wide lots is just pretty small. I don't have anything else to say. I think everybody else, has really covered everything.
Okay.
And I hope everybody really pays attention to what's said. And I just, when I bought my property, I just didn't want to move into an area that all of a sudden you got 70 houses in a real small area.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have any more cards?
Alicia Thornton.
Okay. Pass? Okay. Thank you. Do we have any more cards? Okay.
David Ammerman. Davis Mitchell.
I'm going to pass, but I'm going to say something before I pass.
Okay. Kind of pass, half pass.
Yeah. Did you just call me half pass? So what I would like to say is that I believe Dr. Faison, you mentioned it earlier about wouldn't it be nice to have a nice area for people to go to for the young professionals that are coming into town? And I feel fortunate and blessed to live in the area as well. And nobody here, I didn't hear anyone say that they were against building the subdivision. They wanted the parameters, they wanted to keep the environment the way that it is. And so, I don't mean it to sound snobby, but when you drive over I-95 and you're on Fox Lake Road and you go into that area, there's a feeling of large lots and acres. There's an atmosphere. And you're right, I have no doubt that Mr. Swan and they would do a beautiful job and it would look nice. But you eat away at the environment of the culture of one little chip at a time. And we know that there's other areas over there that are going to be expanded and built. And so when it becomes okay for this area and there's another 200 or 300 acres right around the corner, well, we did it up there. And so what I'm saying is I'm against the smaller lot size because I want to maintain the environment that we've already established. And, why does it have to be 70 houses? Why can't it be 55 or 65? I know that costs are in there, but someone said $350,000 to $400,000 was the price range. Maybe, but with a larger lot, it may be $450,000 to $500,000. So all I'm saying is I'm against it, but not the concept of building. I believe Mr. Page hit the nail on the head right out of the gate. Working with them that we could reach some happy medium that says, okay, you could get what you want in terms of a feasible building environment that would satisfy your needs from both the financial area, and we would be able to get what we were asking for without changing the zoning. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That was a pass.
Yeah, that's kind of a pass now, right? All right, do we, any more cards? Last one, okay.
I have one other thing that we missed on, and I put it up to him. Maybe he can answer that question.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on that.
Well,
it might be very important to what we're doing. I missed it very first.
All right, if you come up real quick, and then we'll move on to the next card.
All right. When I look at 3457, it says the adopted zoning ordinance shall establish the planned development zoning classification on the special parcel. The question is this a classification change?
Yes.
If I go back to 3439, Section B, that in the event the requested zoning is to classification, which is inconsistent with the City of Titusville Comprehensive Plan and or the future land use plan, then the application shall be returned to the applicant and resubmittal and processing as a comprehensive plan amendment.
Right, we're aware.
That's correct.
We are aware that it has to have, it has to go with future land use, it has to go with the comprehensive plan, it has to go through all those criteria, it has to be able, the city has to be able to go through and say that there's concurrency. Now,
But you're going to do this. You're going to do this zoning change before you do those things.
Let's put it this way: the current approval has already passed that to where it said we are concurrent. Now, what has been proposed to us is the city is saying it is met all this criteria, and we have to find whether we agree with that or not.
Where does it say it's concurrent?
If you want to,
I can answer that.
It just makes a statement, but it doesn't have the documents that concurrency requires.
The rezoning ordinance to the plan development zoning, which is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the existing future land use that's on the property right now. So there was no requirement to change the land use or amend the comprehensive plan.
When you go from RE to PD, it's not a classification change?
It's a zoning district change. It's consistent with the overall comprehensive plan. If it was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, then we would have to go through some kind of change to the comprehensive plan to bring a proper land use there. And that would be a different type of hearing then.
I thought I just read it, a zoning change. If you change the zone, it is.
well, yeah. Let me do this because I want to keep order, and I know where you're going. I understand that, but it's really a board decision to find that. It's from my own perspective. I don't believe that to be an issue because I'm looking at the previous development. And it's 70 units or 71 units, and now we're looking at 70 units. The use is literally identical. Okay, so I don't see that the concurrency rates are already there. They would have already been plugged in. The city's already said that we can handle those. As far as the others, it's finding that this particular development is consistent. And those are the questions that we have to look at tonight. Okay, but all right, let's do this. Let's listen to the last card on this, and then the applicant can come up and rebut.
Tom Stewart.
I'm just envisioning myself wading across my front yard in waders to go buy bottled water. But I can't get out of the driveway because of the traffic on the road. I don't think consistency or concurrency has been addressed. I had a real nice conversation with Mr. Parrish this afternoon, and we talked about most of the items that have been addressed here tonight. And it comes down to placing the cart before the horse. We're going to go ahead and say we're going to do this zoning change, and then allow them to find out whether or not the development can proceed effectively, cost effectively for them, and not have an impact on us. From my standpoint, I would feel a lot more secure if we had some sort of information that, no, you're not going to have, I'm not going to have to go out and get a permit to have a lake in my front yard because it's always there. Because of the development, because of what they're going to do. I'd like to have some assurances that concurrency is met prior to the zoning change. And that is my only comment. Thank you.
So I had a question of staff then. Because if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. Because then, now that I'm thinking about it, concurrency could have been pulled out. when we did this back in 2005, 2004, we plugged in them numbers. And then there was a difference. Back in that time frame, the state and the calculations were different, and then they kind of removed them from, do you remember the A, B, C, D, E, F levels of traffic? And so we would have plugged those numbers in, and we would have said Fox Lake and could handle this. Now, were those numbers removed out of that, and do we need to relook at that since it expired?
The previous approval that you're referring to back in 2005 is null and void. It's expired. It was never recorded, so it's not applicable to the property anymore. We just provided that information as background as what happened. As far as concurrency review happens, let me just explain how this process works again. The plan development, this rezoning process is basically just creating a holding category basically for the development, for a type of development. So it's just like any other rezoning in a sense, where you have a zoning district from commercial to residential, and then now you have to meet those new standards. And then you go forward with your site plan review based on what those new standards are for that new zoning district. This is no different. When we review a rezoning, we look at, and we don't know what the applicant is proposing to do. They just want that rezoning on that property in the new zoning district. We look at traffic numbers. We'll speak with our water resources department to see what demand is probably going to be needed out of this project or out of this new zoning district, even though we don't know what might actually be there. And so we base all that kind of estimates based on the worst case scenario, the most intense use in that zoning district. In this case, we know this is going to be a single family. This zoning district is tailored for a single family only. No other use can go there. And it's with certain standards and parameters as well. So you're creating basically a brand new zoning district on this property. We spoke with the different departments that are responsible for concurrency-related facilities, and we found from them that they believe that this conceptual plan, this master plan, will not exceed their level of service standards. But how that specifically determined is with engineered studies and designs and drawings that get submitted to us through the site plan process. We always make every applicant or developer aware that once you have a rezoning completed or a conditional use permit approved, you are going to give you a development order, and it says this is always contingent upon you meeting concurrency-related facilities and level of service standards for concurrency-related facilities. And that is true with every site plan review that we do. You have to meet those standards. You can't get your site plan approved unless you meet those standards.
Okay. Member Ritchie.
I took it away.
No. Well, and here's my issue then. I mean, so I go back and forth from how we used to do it and how we are looking at it now then. And I got a problem with that because I look at Vieira, and it's a perfect example of they're overdeveloping what is their calculations. They're not, it's obvious to me that they're not doing their calculations. And they're building, and then they're looking at the calculations, and then they got to expand their street. The street that I work on is the county is deficient in how they're doing that. And the entire street for miles backs up because they've agreed to let building, industrial, business, warehousing, houses, housing developments, apartments. And so they've loaded that entire street to the point to where there's no doubt in my mind it's an F level. It's flooding. And so now we say, hey, we're on board with that, where we know in the past that we used to look at those calculations. I know this board's looked at those calculations. And we're going to be in that same boat where, and I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but I'm simply saying that it is reasonable to look at those as part of the concurrency. If I got to look at water, and I got to look at sewer, and I got to look at trash, I should also be looking at traffic. But in this particular case,
and flooding and water.
All the above, okay? And But I'm just making the point that I think they make a valid point that now we are putting the cart before the horse, because we're going to get to a point in Titusville where we're being told that we need a lot more housing to support the development, the jobs that are coming. And we don't have enough, and now you're seeing apartments develop pretty steadily right now. My takeout from this is that we probably should look at this. If our process has gone that far, we should probably dial it back and at least start looking at the traffic. I mean, that's important to me. And maybe you'll find that in some of the upcoming meetings. And bear in mind, so I put this out to everybody here on Thursday. Is it Thursday that you guys are doing this out to the residents, everybody?
Yeah, our visioning workshops start.
Vision workshops of what we want in our city. And so it's on Thursdays for 3 months in a row. And it's something that the citizens of Titusville come together and say, this is what we want and this is what we believe. But in my thing, I don't want to see us develop to the point to where we're crawling and we become Orlando. We used to do it, and now I'm being, I know that. But let me dial it back myself and just say, I thought that we added these calculations because when we did this back in the day, we did those calculations and we did look at the traffic, and it was a requirement for developers to do these trip counts in the past. Those would have been calculated before. So I look at this development as already being sustainable for the roadway. Although I understand that the residents are here, I know it and I don't live on there, but it should be able to accommodate the traffic generated from this. So I'll stop because I know that we got other people here and we have other items, and we'll listen to the applicant. And Mr. Ward, if you had some other stuff you wanted to bring up as well.
Gosh, I'd love to talk to you about vision because I love that stuff, but main thing is we don't intend to build a house higher than 35 feet. We're glad to agree to that. I didn't know that was in the ordinance. It's a good point. We do not intend to build a house with less than 2,000 square feet of air-conditioned space. I thought that's what the ordinance required. I didn't realize it even included garages. That wouldn't be feasible to build a lot to build that kind of a house. We couldn't sell it. So those were 2 points that brought up that we can respond to easily. And I tell you that this clustering is really important in the city of Titusville. Titusville has a very unique topography. I mean, I'm sure you all know that, but you have these wonderful relic sand dunes and these wonderful wetland areas, many of them forested with gorgeous forest. And you don't really have much developable land unless you cluster. And I can tell, the other thing I can just tell you is there's a concern about 8,000, 10,000 square foot. It's really the house that goes on there. And we think we know the market, and we know that, that we've done this. I've done the great outdoors. I've sold a lot of houses on 8,000 square foot lots, a lot more expensive than 300,000. So we know this will work, and we think it's a vast improvement backing off of those wetlands, including, in most cases, the riparian areas, the areas that are sometimes wet, which are so important to the ecology in terms of the things that depend on wet-dry interconnect for their survival. So that just kind of wraps it up for us. And if there anything else that came up, we did look, by the way, at things like traffic count. We've done the same thing the staff has done. I wouldn't have spent this much time and money if I didn't think the traffic issue was going to come down to where it's not an issue, because we have done the preliminary work on all of those things. And we may be surprised. We may not be able to do this the way we presented it, and we have to come back to you. But that's where we are.
A couple real quick questions. So you're good with the 2,000 square feet under air. You're agreeing. You said that the 35 foot is fine. Two other things that were brought up was about the no home-based businesses and some way to put a park in there
We'd be glad
what is your response?
to compliment the city's ordinance that exists on home-based business. I heard that was already controlled by the city for the whole city. But we don't want home-based businesses, and we certainly don't want by deed restrictions not allow trucks and all that stuff.
What I'm saying is that something, and I'm not, I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, I'm asking for the people that have spoke previously, if this is something that you would be entertained to, about limiting home-based businesses and maybe a passive or some type of park or, those are the two other things that got brought up. But by all means, it's...
Well, we agreed to build a park, a kid's park, a small park.
So that basically, yes, that's
it'll have benches.
Okay.
And I think the real issue was we didn't show exactly where we wanted to put it. And honestly, till I get out there and feel and see the land after I can touch it, I don't know exactly how that should go. But it'll be there. And if I can't get it, then I don't know. If I don't put it in, then I'm not in compliance with your zoning. So I've got to do it.
So on the home-based businesses, you defer to the city code?
Defer to the city.
Okay. Okay. Well, hold on. He's in rebuttal. We're wrapping this up. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I want to stay to the process.
Can we ask him a question?
After we're done. But let's keep it to the procedure. I don't want to not let you speak, but I know that I kind of need to just keep to the procedure. All right. So, does anybody have questions of Mr. Swan? Okay. Mr. Ward, do you want to address that one issue that from the very beginning?
Yes, if I may just briefly, I believe Mr. Page was referring to the legal description that's attached to the application, and the subject to is at the end, which is very common. I've written thousands of legal descriptions, and they're referred to by the OR booking page, which is official records booking page where the instrument is recorded. It's another page and a half, 2 pages, but if you need to determine exactly where that is, you read that. But I also would like to point out that subject to was a drainage easement to FDOT, and it's clearly shown on the sketch plat, which is the approved master plan that's a part of the application.
Okay. All right. So we'll close this to the public.
Did you show up to me?
I want to make one more comment about the flooding. So one of the requirements that the applicant will have on this is that any water that's captured on their land has to be retained on their land. So if their land is currently flooding yours, that is something that can be addressed. But I thought my understanding is that the water must be contained on their land, and that's something that they must address for this development. So the chances are, and I've said this multiple times, the water conditions for when they do develop on these types of properties should improve because the standards are there. They have to compensate for their development. All right, so I don't want to get on that too much longer. We've closed it to the public and we've brought it back before the board. Is there further questions of staff or further discussions on this?
While we're here, I was concerned about a property north of La Cita and southwest of Riverview Elementary School. It has a wrought iron fence around it. How is that? What is the zoning on that property? What is it?
What is the soil on the property?
The zoning.
The zoning, excuse me.
What is it?
You have to give me a moment. I can take a look at our zoning map and find out what that is.
Okay, later on will be fine for me.
Okay.
I don't know about the audience, but...
What was that?
Does that pertain to this?
I don't know. All right, so I wanted to make some comments on the rezoning on this real quick so that the board has the understanding of some of my thoughts on this, but yours may be different. So originally, back in the day, when we went to cluster zoning, I'm not sure if, Mr. Shavir, you were on the board when we went through this. I know Dr. Faison was, but cluster developments was an issue. And the way we were doing our calculations was an issue. I feel like the standard was this high, it was up high, and then we said, well, we want to make it fit, so we're going to bring the standard here to make it fit. My concern with this is that now we've solidified that agreement, and then now we're going down a step to say residential estate is not, it's no longer needed. Now, my recollection back in the day on residential estate was that it was very, very critical that this property was residential estate. And part of that was because of the character of the neighborhood. The surrounding properties were residential estate, and that was the direction the city had agreed to go to. So that is an issue for me, because residential estate, this, in my mind, it should be residential estate. On the other hand, I look at the plan that was presented, and it's very difficult for me because they're knocking off 2,000 square feet on each lot, and then they're preserving more wetlands. And so those are the things that I'm wrestling with right now, because I know that I'm familiar with this from the past, and I knew it was not an easy deal to make. It took a lot to get to this agreement. And now I feel like we've said, well, okay, you've agreed to development, and now we're just going to put a PD, and that is, in my opinion, kind of a step down, but on the other hand, it's not, it's still consistent with the original plan. And so those are the things that I'm wrestling with. You know, as far as some of the arguments I've heard about being better for the environment, you know, honestly, some of the arguments developers have come up before, they've said, look, we're putting a smaller house on a piece of property, and there's more pervious area. There's less going into the watershed. They are saving more wetlands. I mean, there's a lot of arguments for both sides, but I still go back to the issue of that original agreement was contingent upon this keeping residential estates by doing the cluster. And I find it very difficult. I truly find it difficult to stray from the original agreement because we created a cluster to fit this property. And so there's my thoughts. Are there other questions? I mean, I feel like I'm the only one talking up here.
I guess I'm in conflict too. I see both sides, and I like the fact that you've got a buffer around the whole community, so it's basically not going to be seen from the road. Is that correct? But I do understand the difference. I mean, I think we're all familiar with that area, and I think the homes are on larger lots and such. But where my concern is if for some, if we change it to PD and for some reason this development doesn't go forward and it's dropped, then you've got the PD, and then you have the possibility of another builder coming in and doing something totally different that may not be, with this buffer or whatever. That's my concern. So I'm torn on both sides. So that's my thought.
Dr. Faison, Vice Chairman Shavir, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think I said from the outset that we should have a variety of areas, and I think our community is on the rise. I think the economy is at a point that if we have the kind of housing that we need to attract, we have a lot of people with technical skills in the area, And we need a variety of places for residents. And I would like, we worked very hard on, as you pointed out, Chair, with the community to develop that particular site out there. And I'd like to see it remain.
Vice Chairman.
I like the overall concept of this. However, some concerns have been brought up by the neighbors. And I would like very much for the developer and the folks involved in this, the neighbors, to kind of see if they can't work a little closer together and come up with the real answers so that everyone gets satisfied. I don't see where there's that much of a separation. I really don't see that, and I would really, really like for everyone concerned to just stop for a second, take a little breath here and say, what can we do so that all of us get what we want? And because it is a good concept, and development's coming whether we want it or not. That's just a given. So well, I like the whole idea. You know, I think it's 85% there, but I really would like to see a little bit more work with the parties here. So, like I said, I like this, but it just needs a little tweaking to make everybody happy, and I think that can happen. I don't think you're that far apart in terms of lot size and clustering. I think this can be worked out, and I really would like to see the parties get together and see if it can be done.
The only way that we could do that is to table this to the next meeting. And so, you know, obviously you don't want, all right.
If I may.
That idea has occurred to me, but I didn't want to come out and say it.
Well, I mean, that's the only way to, and they would both would have to be in agreement to talk. So I'm gathering from the facial expressions that isn't something you would rather decision. And, but then again, it is a board decision on how we move forward.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, there are a lot of questions that were brought here. I wish Mr. Don Page had provided me this information prior to the meeting. I would have had a great I'm about halfway through answering his questions. Mm-hmm. But I certainly won't be able to have them ready by the end of the evening, including some responses to some of the comments that were made as well by other persons who spoke. What I can do is maybe suggest to you that you can make your recommendation to City Council, whatever that is, with any conditions, including that staff work with the people who spoke and try to answer their questions in time for the City Council's meeting. I think that's probably the best that we can do at this point. Otherwise, I can go through some of the answers if you like. But I have.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if that would make a difference at this point.
If, in fact, how much of an inconvenience, what would be the consequences if we table this and we actually had another meeting and we came up with the answers, if the parties get together? It seems to me this is a big development. Time is not of the essence, so to speak. And so I think if we table this, perhaps we can come up with something that would be workable. So I'm asking you if that's, yes, I'm sorry. Please.
What was that?
I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure the record's correct on this. Is you know, we missed the 2 meetings that were canceled. Our contract is running out, so we don't have the flexibility under the existing contract to go any further out. We've missed.
Right.
Another possibility tonight is to provide a recommendation to City Council with some specifics of the issues that you would like to see addressed. The second public hearing will be on November 14th. There will be time between now and then for a report to the P&Z on November 8th as to what the compromises that may have been made between now and then. But I think that a recommendation is requested by the applicant for City Council to consider on Tuesday the 24th. And if you could be specific with your motion as to the issues that need to be addressed between now and the final public hearing on November 14th, that is the desire of the applicant.
Vice Chairman.
Having heard the folks here, the neighbors, the people that are concerned and have an interest in how this turns out, would staff be able to provide to the City Council their concerns that have been brought up this evening? And could staff address those concerns, okay, between now and the council meeting, where the folks here would get an answer to their questions along with the developer?
Absolutely. I think we have enough time to do that, and we can certainly try and answer all of the questions prior to the meeting. We're certainly open to have a meeting with anyone who's interested in this project and go over anything that's been talked about today, and have that all prepared in time for the City Council meeting.
Because this is a planned development, can be requested to increase the lot size.
You can certainly recommend to the City Council that the lot size be increased, yes. Yeah.
That's the only difference between RE and PD, really. Is
I understand that, but I understand that is the only difference. The issue I have is I don't know if 2,000 square feet, I feel like we're almost splitting hairs on some of this.
Let me just mention one major difference between the two. What was originally approved back in 2005 using the cluster tool and what is being proposed tonight. And that is, I'm just going to refer you to the staff report. When we worked with the applicant on this, we came up with a new standard for this zoning district that currently doesn't exist. On page 59 of your packet, page 2 of the staff report, you'll see that table again, which compares the existing RE standards, if you built each lot as an acre, with the cluster option under that same zoning district, with the proposed PD zoning district, flexible lot size zoning district, basically, that's being considered tonight. And you'll see under building coverage and lot coverage. Under lot coverage, there is no maximum lot coverage in the current RE zoning district. In this planned development zoning district, we are proposing a 45% lot coverage. That includes building, includes any impervious surfaces, anything of that sort. And so that's something that the applicant has, we work together to try to come up with something like that. And that, I believe, according to the applicant, met their preliminary stormwater analysis. I'll defer to the applicant to explain more about that.
Dr. Faison?
Staff, the question I had asked earlier about the properties in the area of Cedar Country Club and Riverview Elementary School, do you know
Yes, sir.
How that is zoned?
It's zoned R1B. That is a medium density type zoning district,
Yeah,
single family.
Okay.
Okay, so we went over this for over 2 hours. What is the commission's desire? I can't make the motion, so it has to be one of you three. Vice Chairman?
I think everything is very close here, and I really, really, really would like for the developer and the folks here to get together and work this out, as I've already said that. But if staff would, I don't know, if you go to council, prepare council okay, with the questions that these folks have, ultimately, council's going to have the decision on this, yes or no, as to how this turns out. It's not up to us here at Planning and Zoning. We just make recommendations. So what I would, while I'm speaking here, I'll make the recommendation that staff come up with the questions that these folks, I didn't write all the questions down, but their concerns about everything they have brought up this evening be addressed by staff and presented with this agenda for this development, and all of the concerns be brought up to City Council with staff's recommendations. And of course, that'll be published well ahead of time so that you folks would have the opportunity to read and understand what staff has come up with for those recommendations. And when you go to council, then you'll be able to either say this is okay, or if you object, go back up there and say, no, I don't approve of what we've come up with here. So that's one way of approaching this. It's a good development. It's not a bad development. It just needs to be tweaked so that everybody gets happy.
You can tweak RE.
I'm sorry?
We can tweak it as RE, not go to PD.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
That's okay.
let's stick to what we're supposed to be doing here. So what is the actual motion, to approve or not approve?
I agree with the folks here that this should be we should be conforming with residential estates. And I think that's really where I have a problem. That's my whole problem here is that's, I think, where we should be instead of starting to change this. So my recommendation would be that we not approve rezoning number 3-20-17 plan development and master plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we take a roll call on this vote?
Vice Chairman Shavir.
And this is a motion to not approve. Yes.
Mr. Shavir, could you state the basis for your denial?
The reason for the denial is because I have concerns about the lot size. The folks here want some compatibility with the zoning, surrounding zoning. And that's basically, like I said, I think everything's very close, but that's basically where I'm coming from.
Generally, the voters had and didn't.
The reasons given, yes.
That has been the procedure in the past, that we would have the vote and determine whether or not there is a negative, even if not.
Member Ritchie.
I'm going to vote for against the motion. I believe you've got 70 lots and it was 72, so you still have the same amount of traffic either way. Sorry.
So you said yes. So you're voting to...
I'm voting against his motion.
Okay.
I see both sides, but I see that there's, they've got the buffer and they're preserving more wetlands, but you're still having the same number of lots. And I agree with Dr. Faison about there being more development in the area, and I think this could be a good project for the city.
Dr. Faison?
May I hear the motion again?
The motion was to deny the rezoning based on the lot size and other issues that were brought up with staff.
My vote is to deny.
Okay. He said to deny.
My
Did
vote
you
is
want
to
his reason?
deny.
Reasoning? Dr. Faison?
I'll have to wait until we've all voted
Okay.
and find out where we are. That's the procedure we've used over
All right. So I will vote as well to deny. And my reasoning is this. My reasoning is because, what was that? I thought we had 4. I thought he already voted.
He was the first roll call.
All right, so my reasoning was that this is not in the character of residential estate, although it's only 2,000 square feet. I'm looking at the previous, to get to that point for a cluster residential, we clustered it and declared it residential back then, and now I feel like we are changing the character of that cluster development. Residential estate is within the character of the neighborhood. And to move away from that and to move away from the original rezoning is not in the character of the neighborhood. Dr. Faison?
I think we need to retain enough of the RE for what I think is going to happen to Titusville. And we need a variety of areas to be built.
Okay, there you have it. Good luck. Good luck, sir.
Very thoughtful consideration.
I think you're very close. I do.
It's like hand grenades or whatever that.
Thank you. Yes, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Thank you.
Convene the meeting and get started again.
What page are we on?
All right, so what we did was we moved and here's my agenda. All right, so now we're going to go to small scale amendment number 2, which is line item D.
79, page number 79. Wait, what page are you on?
So it'd be 79.
79. That's where I'm at.
It's page 79 of your packet.
Okay.
So this application before you tonight is for a small-scale amendment number 2-2017, and there's a public hearing for you tonight to address this land use change and rezoning change. The applicant is requesting a small-scale amendment comprehensive plan land use change to the city's comprehensive plan future land use map, and to rezone the property in order to allow for the possible construction of a building with assembly-type uses. The total property area is 272 plus acres approximately. The amendment and rezoning pertain to only a 6-acre area of this property. The property is immediately, or the subject area of this property is located immediately adjacent to Fox Lake Road on the south side of Fox Lake. The amendment proposes to replace the existing conservation comprehensive plan future land use designation with the comprehensive plan future land use designation of residential 1, and to replace the existing open space and recreation OR zoning district with the general use zoning district. I'm just going to go through quickly what is being requested here. We found that there was the property was annexed and in 2005, and the property had the residential estate zoning applied to the property, including several areas that were where the OR zoning was applied to the property. Now I'm talking about the entire 272 acres. And I'm going to refer you to a page in your packet that shows the entire property so that you have an understanding of what I'm talking about. Page 97 of your packet is probably going to give you the best illustration, or even 101. I'll refer to page 101. And the map says overall area of the property zoning map. So you see this is a very large piece of property. It's vacant. It's 272 plus acres. The area that's being requested to rezone is that area in the very top that's currently zoned OR. It's labeled there OR. Everyone found that? Page 101 of your packet. Yes, sir. That's it. Okay. Very top of that page, you'll see kind of a shaded area there that's labeled OR, right next to Fox Lake Road. Okay. Okay, so the land use and the zoning boundaries are the same. So I'm going to go back to the staff report on page 82 of your packet. So there were several conditions that were applied to that property when that zoning district was applied to this property. They had a minimum 1-acre lot requirement, a maximum of 225 lots for any subdivision there. Minimum square foot of the homes, 2,000 square feet. Limit building height, 35 feet. And they were supposed to provide a development agreement. None of this passed. None of this happened. So the property has remained vacant since. The location of the conservation land use and OR zoning appeared coterminous with the conceptual subdivision plan dated February 1st, 2006. So we believe that the area that is labeled OR is currently We don't have evidence that there is a wetland there. The applicant has provided that evidence to us. We believe that area was designated OR back in 2005 because of a conceptual plan that may have been reviewed by staff. At the time, we could not find that conceptual plan. The only plan that we could find was one that was approved in 2006, which shows the same boundaries of this area that's the subject tonight. Ordinance number 11, 2012, year 2012, approved rezoning application request 1 of that year and rezoned the property from the RE to the GU, General Use Zoning District. According to the staff report dated at that time, the rezoning request from RE to GU specifically did not include a request to amend the OR. So only the portion of the property that had the RE zoning on it of that 272 acres was rezoned to GU. Anywhere there was existing OR did not change at all. It just remained. The current request is to change that land use and rezoning request to amend only that portion that I just identified to you on page 101 of your packet, not the other areas that are zoned OR. After a thorough review of the previous rezonings and review of an environmental analysis that was submitted in 2005, including data derived from the National Wetlands Inventory, the staff was able to determine that wetland soils do not exist at the subject location. So we went through our review based on the comprehensive plan. We found the land use change to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. I identified several policies that are specific to that on page 83 of your packet. That's page 3 of the staff report. Public facilities are available concurrent with the land use change to the GU zoning district and to the residential land use change. Public streets are adequate to access the property. It's right there on Fox Lake. The land will support the proposed development. We understand that the applicant may propose a banquet facility there. The environmental impact, I have a statement in there on page 84 of your packet. The property is currently vacant and covered with vegetation. The city's wetland and conservation area overlay requires that all wetlands 5 acres or greater to be designated with the comprehensive plan, conservation, future land use. However, based on the soils information provided, staff was able to determine that the wetland soils do not exist in the subject area. Any clearing or development of these properties shall be subject to our standard regulations in Chapter 30 of our development standards for environmental protection. Consistency of existing zoning. The existing zoning, the OR zoning, if deemed consistent with the comprehensive plan, shall be presumed correct unless substantial change in the area has occurred since the original zoning. Our finding is that the city's wetland and conservation area overlay requires, again, that all areas, wetlands 5 acres or greater be designated with that conservation land use. But again, we could not find evidence that this was warranted here because of lack of information that there was a wetland there. I did include a table on page 84 of your packet. That's page 4 of the staff report that includes the differences between the densities. So the overall maximum density according to the land uses from conservation is right now 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. The proposed land use, which was residential 1, will have a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per acre. That's consistent with the surrounding property of the 272 acres. The OR zoning has a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per acre, 5 acres, and the GU zoning has a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per 3 acres. So if this is approved, the maximum density will be 1 dwelling unit per 3 acres, consistent with the rest of the property that's currently zoned GU. We found that the application is consistent with the zoning in the area. I did identify a few uses that would be allowed with this new zoning district placed on this portion of the property on page 86 of your packet, and those include agricultural pursuits, single-family detached dwelling at a density of 1 unit per 3 acres, bed and breakfast, child care, cemetery, church, community service, such as public recreational, social, or meeting facilities, school, golf courses, and public or private parks. Again, that's consistent with the zoning on the rest of the property. Buffering and screening will be addressed during any site plan review. Substantial reasons why the property cannot be used in the existing zoning district. Again, a wetland does not exist at the subject area. The amendment may be developed consistent with the city's regulations. So staff recommends approval of this request to amend the future land use and the zoning to the residential 1 land use and to the general use zoning district. With that, I'll try and answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions of staff? Okay. One quick question. So we always talk about cemeteries in GU. We always do. But so if he wanted to put a cemetery there, you just do it, or is it conditional use?
I believe I put them down, these items down as permitted by right.
Right. Yeah. So I'd say this is maybe a policy you should probably look at, just so that you don't have the threat. We should probably look at conditional use for cemeteries. I don't know. I mean, that's. I know, but that's always it's always what I hear is that we can put a cemetery there, you know. So, are there any other questions of staff? All right, so we'll open this to the public. We have cards on this item.
Grady Strickland.
Mr. Strickland. I didn't, we'll wait to decide. I didn't honestly know how long this would take. I didn't, so I saw 11 people. So
okay. It was interesting before, so we're okay. Anyhow, Grady Strickland, 4955 Hamlin Circle. As the owner and applicant, originally when I came through the door, I asked to change the zoning on this property from residential back to, I call it agricultural, basically is what it was before it was ultimately annexed into the city, changed to RE. You still call it GU, but I'm zoned agricultural and I pay taxes as agricultural. Got a total of 270 some odd acres right there. And basically, when we had the OR right up against the front of the property, which is on Fox Lake Road, simply, it wasn't. It was a sand hill. It was sugar sand. The soil profile indicated that it was not environmental wetlands or any of that. So I'm not asking to change the zoning. My GU or agricultural is exactly what I want. I'm just cleaning up where when the previous people that own this came to the city and came in and started putting all these OR dots all over the place. If they're wetlands, it's my understanding that the state actually governs wetlands anyhow. But for this particular meeting, all I'm asking to do is remove that OR and go back to my GU or agricultural along the front of the property.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Questions? I remember you guys coming up here. I remember you
we
talking
had
about your
this
lawyer.
Yeah, right.
You know, it might have been my lawyer. I remember. Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you. Sid, do you have a card on this?
I concur, with the staff, because, we went through the process with the staff.
Okay. So do we have any other cards? All right, so we'll close this to the public, bring it back for the board. Is there questions of staff, discussions, or recommendation on this item?
I would recommend approval of the item as submitted.
Okay, Dr. Payson made the motion. We have a second. Member Ritchie. Can we have a roll call on this?
Dr. Faison?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir?
Yes.
Member Ritchie? Yes. Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay.
You're
right, that was pretty quick.
3.5 minutes.
Could have been 5.
Thank you.
Hey, Bo?
Sir.
You heard him. That was one of my students in junior high school.
You've been serving this public a long time, haven't you, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
I got a question.
Okay.
I got a question over that. I don't want to ask in the public.
Well, other items complete, so.
That was kind of complicated.
Chairman, should we take a recess? Or?
He's coming by.
Yeah, I hear you.
So we have cards on B, so can we move B? Is the commission acceptable to move B to the next item? We'll go D, C, B, A. So, D, C, B, A. Yeah. All right. All right, so let's just do that.
Okay. This item B before you is a draft ordinance related to food service establishments in the industrial zoning districts. I'm sorry, that is page 51. Okay. So, based upon a request from a citizen, council directed staff to develop an ordinance that would permit caterers and takeout restaurants in industrial areas. Currently, restaurants are permitted as accessory uses to breweries, distilleries, and industrial and zoning districts, and restaurants that cater to industrial uses are permitted within the planned industrial development district. The proposed ordinance creates definitions of caterers and takeout restaurants consistent with state license definitions. The ordinance also permits caterers and takeout restaurants in the light industrial services and manufacturing M1 zoning classification. A summary of the proposed changes is attached, and that is located on page 55 of your packet. So what this does is that the light industrial services and warehouses housing zoning district M1 restaurants are accessory uses with craft brewery or craft distillery manufacturing use. The proposed code change includes caterers and takeout restaurants will be permitted uses. The pros and cons of this: industrial buildings typically have lower rents per square foot than commercial buildings. Industrial developments require to provide less parking than takeout restaurants. Industrial uses are limited within the city. Addition of non-traditional industrial uses can displace other industrial uses that cannot locate in any other area. We're also proposing that it be allowed in the M2, the heavy industrial zoning district. Regulations remain the same. The pro and con of this is that it maintains the status quo. Heaviest industrial uses most likely to generate fumes and other hazards that may not be compatible with food service and warehousing type buildings. Breweries unlikely to generate problematic hazards. Limits areas in which caterers and takeout restaurants can be located. So these are just some things to consider when we propose this ordinance to you. So I'm going to turn you to page 52 of your packet, and that's the beginning of the ordinance. And you'll see under strike through and underline language, that is, the underlined language is the proposed language. And you see we've included two new definitions, one for caterer, one for takeout. Caterer would be basically a food or drink is prepared at a kitchen and then the food is delivered somewhere else. Takeout meaning the establishment offers takeout or delivery of food or beverages, but not permit customers to dine in. So that's really the difference between the two. And so when you look on page 53 of your packet, you'll see where we've included some language, some standards to allow these uses to be combined together inside the M1 and the M2 zoning district. So on page 53, you'll see under paragraph C2, under the underlined language, caterers and takeout restaurants as defined herein are permitted without the need to be accessory to a craft brewery or craft distillery manufacturing use. So you can have a catering business in the M1 We're the M2 zoning district. And you can also have a takeout with it as well. So someone can come up and actually order food and take it away. It's not part of a restaurant. This is just a catering business. And then you also can provide single meals as part of takeout. So we did, after some review today, we realized that we want to make a clarification on one of the definitions, cater, and I gave you a handout, one of my 2 handouts tonight. And it's the first page of the ordinance. And you'll see on the bottom there, the first sentence out of the definition for caterer is struck out. So the definition of a caterer is food or drink is prepared in a licensed kitchen and served at another location. That's it. And we also include, and anywhere else we had that definition under Section 2 of this ordinance, we made that correction as well. The reason is we didn't want to confuse the issue where later on page 53, which I just read to you, that the definition says that, the original definition says that a caterer does not offer takeout, but yet in the M1 we're saying that you can have catering and takeout. So we wanted to make sure we weren't creating an issue later on for current and future staff and that interpretation. So that's why we made that clarification with the definition of what a caterer is. So with that, I'll try and answer any questions for you. I hope I didn't confuse you on this.
Okay. Let's see if I can wrap my brain around this. No, I had a question about limited. So you have this as limited in M1 and M2?
Correct.
And how is it limited again?
Limited means permitted, but you have to meet these conditions, these standards.
And what was, can we go over the conditions again?
In the M1, that you can have a catering business and a takeout restaurant as defined in the code, without the need of having to be part of a craft brewery or craft distillery manufacturing use. So it's not really a condition, it's more like a clarification of what you're allowed to do.
And that's why it confused me. All right, so it's kind of really not limited, but the other thing is, can you give me the list of businesses that can be in M1 and M2? I know that you have a list. But, and I don't know the list off my hand, but I'm sure what I see in M1 and M2 is you think of storage. But at the same time, we see more industrial uses happening, similar industrial uses into M1 and M2. So I can wrap my head around allowing this in this particular location, but I do believe that we need to look at specific locations because different M1, M2 have different uses, and some are not appropriate, some are. So my thought process on this is maybe we should make this as a conditional use so that you can literally look at the building, what uses are currently there, so that it's not, so that it is compatible with takeout. I've worked in an M1 place in the past, and it would not have been, let me put it this way, in the development that I was in, it would not be compatible. Across the way, it would have been. So you just can't tell the nature without looking at the specific project, is my thinking.
Certainly. Excuse me. Thank you.
What was the uses now?
The uses that are as far as retail, commercial uses, or industrial?
M1 and M2, both. Because we're technically, we would be adding them to both.
Well, the M1, I'm going to go through the industrial uses in both of those zoning districts. So the M1 and the M2, the M1 is more light industrial, the M2 is heavy.
Yes.
So they both allow bakeries and confectionaries, bottling plants, building trade services, craft brewery, distillery, dry cleaning, freight distribution, heavy industrial uses, which are specifically defined and are required as a conditional use in the M2, Heavy manufacturing, only in the M2. Laboratory research testing are allowed in both. Machine shop, both. Mechanical service and repair. Mini warehouse is a conditional use in both zoning districts. Print shop, printing, and engraving is permitted in the M2. Recycling and mulching and composting is allowed in the M2. Retail or wholesale of products manufactured on site are permitted in the M1 and 2.
Skip nursery. Plant nurseries.
Plant nurseries are allowed in the M1 only. Transmission towers are allowed in both zoning districts. Yeah, they're conditional uses though. Transportation facilities are only allowed in the M2. Vehicle for hire establishments in the M1. And warehouse wholesale are allowed in both. Welding, metalworking, fabrication are also allowed in both. So there are a few differences really. Primarily heavy noxious type uses are probably be limited to M2.
Okay. So maybe we should look at M2 rather than M1. I mean, when you're saying bakeries, I think that would be acceptable. If it would be more fitting for M1, definitely. M2, maybe we should look at that, but that's my thoughts. So, okay. Are there any other questions of staff?
Are you saying in M2 that there is already they're already allowed to have the distilleries and craft breweries?
Yes.
Correct.
But bear in mind, we specifically changed that for one person in town. One, not person, one business.
I think that it's important to also reflect on that this ordinance we're looking at was amended to allow craft breweries and distilleries, and we're adding upon that change that was recently made in this section of the code. And so when the city allowed those craft breweries and distilleries in M1 and M2, that opened up the door to discuss whether or not food services are appropriate in those zoning categories, and that's what's before you tonight.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Vice Chairman.
When you say catering, now I understand what catering is. They prepare it on the premises and deliver it to another location. But when you say pickup, does that... That's another story. That's something else altogether when you're adding pickup to that. And I wonder if staff has a comment on that. I mean, that's just...
I'd like to comment on the distinction between the two definitions that we've proposed between caterer and takeout non-seating restaurant. The reason that the city is establishing these two different categories of definitions that an individual can apply for a license to operate under is because of Florida's Department of Business and Professional Regulation that has different licensing categories for these types of food service establishments. And the catering license that an individual can apply for can be one or the other or both of these two definitions that we have before you tonight. The original definition for caterer was based upon a catering license as a type of food service license that does not offer eating in or delivery takeout. That is the way that Florida DBPR defines what the license is. And we amended our definition for catering so that it's clear in the use, which is not the same as the definition for the license. But the reason that there's two definitions is because there's different licenses available for business owners. I have more information here about the other license options from DBPR if that's something you're interested in hearing more about.
Does it relate to?
I think that I've covered the summary of why we have these different options, and I understand that there's an individual here who may want to speak to this ordinance as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. There was a clarification. There's one other zoning district where this will be allowed too. So on that same page, 53.
PID?
In the PID, yes.
Okay. All right, so let's open this to the public. And well, not the applicant, but you'll come up. Okay.
My name's Gary Boyer. I actually live on Mullet Road in Cape Canaveral, but you all know me as a prior police officer here for 25 years. I have a multitude of businesses here in town. We're getting ready to expand that even more. As far as catering goes, we've actually been operating at the location for a little over 2 years now. We are licensed through the county and the state as a food service establishment. We're licensed through the city. We went in as a catering thing. We're trying to clean all that up because there was no real definitions or no other things that were in there. So all this is kind of to make it a little bit easier and more understanding down the road. You had one question concerning catering. There's several aspects to catering. One is we prepare meals for large groups, but churches and some of those groups don't want to pay for us to serve them or for us to hire those people. So they will come in and pick up those meals, or we will drop it off or deliver it to them. That's one of the reasons they didn't want to curtail that definition down too much, because that is part of the business. We deal with SpaceX, Boeing, Ameriprise, several of the other companies where we deliver, different caterers that operate out of our business deliver food to those companies for lunches, for regular. They'll order a week ahead of time and they'll deliver that, or they'll stop by and pick up because they have a special meeting and they want 20 people, but they don't want us there during their meeting. So they'll actually take care of the service and the different things off-site at their own locations. So that's one of the reasons. So there is a pickup and a delivery component to the catering. It's not always us serving the meals at a wedding or something along those lines. But we're good with the definition. We understand the expansion of it. We think it's a good thing. It was thought out and put into the planning, or the planned industrial zone. We think this will be consistent. This will help down the road as you get more large businesses in. You get more of those light industry areas filling up. They're going to be bringing in cafes. They're going to be bringing in other things to support those people that are in those places. And we think this is good for the city of Titusville.
You said you're currently in a PID?
No, I'm currently on Bobby Lane, so I'm in an M1.
M1, okay.
I just don't want to brew beer. So I don't want to brew beer. I'm good with serving food, but right now it's kind of, we need to brew beer along with serving the food to be where we're at.
Okay.
Where are you located?
We're located across from Brevard Uniform, right on the corner of Bobby Lane and 405.
Yeah. Or do you serve food there?
No, we're not a dine-in restaurant. We're open on Fridays. People can order in bulk from us and wholesale, and we're going to expand on that a little bit, but that's it. We do catering. What our main, we service anywhere all over the state of Florida. We've actually done events up in North Carolina. We do barbecue. We've done a number of the churches throughout Brevard County.
But no takeout?
Not specifically. Yes, we do some on Fridays. Fridays, we prepare food ahead of time so that people can order it up, and that helps us generate new customers. And that way we have different companies that will call up and order for 2 pounds of this or 9 dinners of this or do different things, and that helps us out. But that's also why we're a commercial kitchen. We also lease space out to other caterers to use our kitchen, our commercial kitchen. And so that's why we're trying to expand and get all this sorted so that we fit and everything fits well with where we're at and what we're doing.
Can you ask the name of your business?
Real Pit Barbecue is one of them.
Real Pit?
Yep, R-E-E-L.
I think I've heard of that. Definitely heard of
We
that.
catered the city's annual picnic. We catered some stuff for the fire department, the air show, quite a few other things, some retirements, some pensions. We've done, well, like I said, I've been in the city for a long time, so we try to help out as much as we possibly can.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay, are there any other cards on this?
No, sir.
Okay, so we'll close it to the public. All right, so this is my thoughts. M1, I don't really have such an issue. That is very light. M2, PID, I think that we should take a closer look. Not because I don't think it's not consistent, or it can't be consistent. I think that we need to look at the businesses that are currently there and the impact that it could have on them, or if it is compatible. You don't want to put them by a manufacturer. My personal take is, you wouldn't want to put it by a heavier industrial manufacturer. On the other hand, all right, I'm trying to understand the planned industrial development. the police department is in a planned industrial, what is that? Is that in planned industrial development? So years ago, Cartridge Source of America had a restaurant there, a cafe. And then I remember that there was some discussions on that. But they cooked some food here and there. What I'm trying to ask is that, back in the day there was some discussion, I know Joe, but could a cafe open up again in that area? Which I didn't think it was inappropriate. I mean, I was actually been to their cafeteria. I didn't think it was inappropriate, but I think that, I'm just questioning, could it happen again?
The industrial zoning districts do allow a certain amount of retail as, it's considered to be not the primary use of the industrial zoning district, more kind of accessory. So I think the example you just gave, where you have a cafe as part of the overall development there is as accessory to the primary use, would be consistent with the zoning. That's something we would permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So going back to what I was thinking is that, so what are your thoughts on maybe, I know you guys don't like doing conditional uses, but
at least with it, as long as we just think that it's good to have some specific criteria with it if we come up with it, if we impose a conditional use requirement. That's what.
Like, is it contradictory to the current businesses there? I mean, that would be a good enough requirement?
It sounds to me.
That sounds very.
It sounds to me that you're very concerned about having it in the heavy industrial and in the PID, but you're okay with it in the M1.
Yes, and that's why I was saying permitted in M1, conditional in M2 and PID, because we can agree that it is light industrial in M1. We know that is, but M2 and PID is more, you said no M3, so we're good, but there's more question in M2 and in PID, I think. And it's not like I want to burden anybody, but I think that you have to pause and you have to look at, like I said, in the industrial development that I was in, the segment that my building or my business was in would be inappropriate, but right across the way, it would have been acceptable. And that's why I'm just saying it really depends upon the location and the businesses that are there.
I want to clarify. I'm so glad Chelsea's here to help me. On page 53 of the ordinance, it actually says in that subparagraph 3 that caterers and takeout restaurants are not permitted in the M2 zoning district. So in this particular case, it would.
PID, it is permitted.
But PID, we were proposing it would be permitted. So the issue now, it sounds like.
You have on your chart here that it is.
This ordinance, again, was crafted for the craft beers. And when we had that original language, under Section C, it's all of those standards that are limited. And the limitations under that chart are specified under 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And previously, you saw only language about the craft beer and the limitations therein. And so in M2, we're continuing to allow those brew pubs, but not catering. And that's the clarification in number 3 compared to M1.
My apologies, but that's correct.
Oh, okay. All right, I got it now. All right,
the reason we did that is at staff level, we discussed exactly here what you're saying, Chairman, about M2 being more intense than M1.
Yeah. Okay, so then now I'm only focusing on PID. Correct. And so I would think that would be maybe the one location to say to a conditional use. To question if it, because that, interesting enough, PID is a wide variety mix from light to potential heavy, right? And so you really don't know what you got in there until you actually look. My thoughts, but it would have to be part of the motion. So, all right, and we already closed this to the public, correct? All right, so what is the commission's desire on this? Guess you are.
So let's see if I have this right. What we're going to do is we're going to exclude the caterers from the PID. Is that correct?
No, I was saying conditional.
So you want to make that a conditional?
Just a conditional use where and the criteria would be if it was not by heavy industrial.
Well,
that's my thoughts, but it's your motion.
No,
so.
well, hear me out. If you're going to use a conditional use for, once you establish a caterer in PID, that's going to impact somebody who maybe wants to come in there and start a business or have something going on there that's going to be incompatible with the catering business that we've allowed in there. So I think that's something we should look at. In other words, if you okay an establishment, a catering business in PID, and then someone comes into that PID and decides, well, they're going to have a business that's really toxic in some way or doesn't work with a catering business, and so you're going to have to acknowledge that the caterer was there first, and so you're going to have to exclude someone from that district that really should be there.
And that's the thing is until you actually look to see if it works, and it highlights my point, until you actually look at that location, does this work, is it appropriate? And that's the only reason why I say that we shouldn't make it a permitted use, just blanket.
While the motion is still in discussion, I'd like to have the commission review all of the language that is proposed for C4, which says that in PID, restaurants must be accessory to permitted uses within the district, period. Then there's an additional sentence that's recommended in the ordinance tonight that says caterers and takeout restaurants as defined herein are permitted as a primary use. It may be appropriate to suggest deleting that sentence or amending that sentence to reflect the Commission's desire. I think that the goal tonight is to identify whether catering and takeout is allowed, permitted, or limited in M1 and then M2 and then PID, and each of those zoning categories can be addressed by this group, but I think that you very specifically should look at the language in 4 and see how it meets with your intent.
Well, I know, and that was the language that was changed to allow him to remain back in the day. I mean, that's just saying that somebody can have a cafe on their primary business. So it's gonna, I don't know, but well, it's your motion. You do what you want to do.
Now I'm confused.
What she's saying is that there's a difference between there. You can already have a restaurant in PID as long as it's a secondary use to the primary use, and so we need to look at that because caterers now are permitted as primary uses, but then they could have a secondary use as a restaurant, right? According to that language.
So why do we have to do it? Why would we have to do anything?
So because the definition of caterers is that there's a conflict between this language and the other language, between the definition of caterer versus, if I had a catering business and then I had a side restaurant, but this language says that you can basically have a restaurant and cater, right? It doesn't look clean, but if you want to come up, is that?
Can I? The restaurant is already there. The catering is a lesser included. inside a restaurant, every restaurant can do catering. That's an automatic thing from the state.
No, I know that, but
In the M1, it says that for me to do these things, I have to brew beer.
Well, no, we're only
And
talking
that's what
about
we're wanting to
PID
do.
though.
PID, I think, is the same along those lines, though, is that it's attached to a brew pub or it's part of the planning.
No, let me clarify. So in the specifically just to the PID zoning district, Planned Industrial Development zoning district. So a restaurant must be a restaurant. So I think not a catering, not a takeout. This is a place where you can go and order food and sit down and eat. So you're getting single meals to sit down and eat. That is considered to be an accessory to the permitted uses within that industrial zoning district. So it's something that serves those primary uses. Caterers can be a primary business. I mean, you're preparing food in bulk. That is something that could be considered as a primary use in that zoning district.
Right.
Now, it's not technically supposed to have, I guess, according to this definition, you can have a restaurant as an accessory to that main business, based on what it's written here.
Right.
I think that's what this is saying.
That's what I'm saying, and that's that's not what you're intended, but that's what would happen if.
Correct. No, this is our intent.
You are intending that.
We've always. I mean, catering is you're building. You're preparing in bulk.
Okay.
I mean, that's and just by itself only.
But then, I mean, so if I was to say that we should still do a conditional use for catering,
okay,
and then that would still, and then if they want to have a restaurant and that's their primary business, fine. It would still, you would still have that. It fits the area. It fits the use and where inside that planned industrial it's at. You understand why I'm saying that? Because within the planned industrial development currently, I could be by hydraulics maker, and it doesn't seem appropriate to me to be in the middle of
as a primary use. I think I know where you're going. So if you want to make that motion that catering, as we've stated here, as a primary use, should be approved only through the conditional use process, that's something we can carry that recommendation over to council.
And then that's your decision if that's what you want to, whoever wants to make a motion. So, unless I'm not passing the gavel, so it's.
I'm not ready. Question here.
Okay.
Will Pacific in terms of, where is it? Give me time. I'll find it. But you specify De Leon Avenue and Park Avenue.
That's current existing language. That's existing language.
Why is that the case? As I'm asking.
I believe you're referring to the existing urban mixed-use zoning district.
Where are we?
That's on page 53 of your packet.
53 where?
Around the middle there. It looks like it's paragraph 5.
5.
That's what you're referring to, sir.
Right, the urban mixed-use zoning district restaurants.
Right.
Shall be located on property that is adjoining to an intersection of De Leon Avenue.
Right, that's existing language in the code right now.
What was the reason for that?
That, my understanding, is when there's a neighborhood just west of the downtown on the west side of the railroad tracks that has a zoning district of UMU, this particular zoning district. And my understanding is that several years ago, the planning staff worked with the community there to come up with standards that would help protect the neighborhood. And one of them was to try and steer non-residential uses to those particular intersections only.
The Victory Village, was that UMU?
I can't say.
I've been on this thing a long time, and I don't remember anything like that.
Okay. That's my understanding.
Like 9 houses or something, little. I just remember doing a UMU.
You will see a UMU zoning amendment coming before you in the very near future.
Yeah, we've been working with the community there already because of another advisability we received from staff. So on a side note, we've been working with them on trying to revise that zoning district to be a little more flexible as to where you can put non-residential uses, including restaurants. And the reason is because you've got the trailhead of the new trail going right there on Main Street through this neighborhood. And we thought that making some changes to the zoning district to be more flexible would accommodate that trail.
Guys, are you listening to what we're doing, or you're into another thing altogether? Are we?
But that's a different ordinance altogether. So this language you just referred to here, sir, it's existing in the code right now. But we could certainly discuss it when that new ordinance comes before you, which I believe is your next meeting.
Okay, and in any River City neighborhood commercial zoning district, any outdoor seating, I don't remember.
Yes, sir. Again, that's existing language.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about the title under ordinance number XX-2017.
Where are you?
The page that he gave us, or the very first page. All right, so you have in there that the language on there is by amending the limited uses of lighthouse and industrial services and warehousing M1, industrial M2, and planned industrial development PID zoning districts. Okay, so I'll stop there, and I'll say that that's why I think we're having some part of the confusion on this, because you have M2 in there as well. So is that something that should be struck out because you're not modifying M2 for this? Or do we leave it in because the language is modifying M2?
Go ahead.
The title was advertised to allow the city to affect those different sections of the code and ordinance, and I think the title is appropriate for the different sections that are being addressed by this ordinance, and there is language that has changed that talks about M2, so I think the title is appropriate.
Okay.
So you want to approve the ordinance as is?
No, I was saying to put a conditional use on PID. That's all.
Okay.
PID or M2?
What was that?
On PID or M2?
Just PID, because it's banned out of M2. You can't do it in M2.
I don't know if this is what you just meant, but the title does not reference conditional uses. And by applying a conditional requirement to the PID, that may require re-advertising, and you can still continue with a recommendation to council that is your course of action. And if council follows your course of action and agrees that the catering business should be conditional in PID, then that may require re-advertising for PID to allow that use to become conditional according to the advertisement, which we did not advertise a proposed conditional use.
But if we were to advertise, well, I'm not going to argue about this, but if I was to say no on, that doesn't matter. I'm just saying if we said, look, M1 is good, but PID no, but then the advertising would be acceptable.
We could approve the ordinance as advertised, and
but it's just a recommendation
and
anyway.
Recommend to council that they also make it conditional at a future ordinance, and that would be something that council would have to entertain. But I don't think that they could approve it under the advertisement that you have before you tonight. But they could still agree with your recommendation and direct staff to act in accordance with the conditional use that you're recommending tonight, even if it's not included as a part of the adopted ordinance.
Okay. Well, your call. You're making the motion.
I'm trying to follow. I understand what you're saying. In other words, we can approve the ordinance XX 2017 for M1 and N2.
As written, and with the following recommendation to make a change to PID, if you think that council should also amend the way that it was presented to you tonight, you have two options. You can strike the whole ordinance, which would not allow catering in these different zoning districts the way that it's presented to you, and tell staff to reconstruct it and re-advertise with conditional being one of the requirements. Or we could approve the ordinance as written, and you could also make a motion that council look at the PID and amend catering to require that it be conditional, which would require a new advertisement in the future, but it would satisfy the intent of what this board has discussed tonight.
Thank you. So I make a motion to approve ordinance XX2017 as presented with the recommendation that the PID be considered for a conditional use permit at some time in the future.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we take a vote on this?
Vice Chairman Shavir?
Yes.
Member Ritchie?
Yes.
Dr. Faison?
Yes.
Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay. Thank you and good luck. And thank you. Like I said, I've heard of it before, so I hope you guys do great. Good things. I have heard good things.
Be down for a sandwich tomorrow.
We're going to bring more to you soon. Come on down. Come on down Friday.
Like it.
I'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been long.
Yeah.
All right, last item.
Which is
The biggest one will be a beer and
The ordinance, what do you call it? The glitch ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Yep. This would be the very first item that we were originally going to hear.
Page
3.
3 of your 12 of your packet. This is a very long ordinance. There is a summary on page 49 of your packet. On my packet, I have it starting at page 12. Am I incorrect, or that's?
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay. I will go through this briefly. Basically, what this ordinance is doing is it's glitch ordinance 2.0. I don't know if you remember 1.0, the last time we did this. But if you recall, the last year we did a complete overhaul or restructuring of our code and got rid of some redundancies and so on. And we continue to find some, because it is a complicated code, and unfortunately we still find some glitches or some issues where we need to make some tweaks here and there and some clarification. So that's what we're doing here. And we continue to keep a tally of all these as we go through our code. And so we're just at a moment right now where we can give you a large package of some of these corrections now. On page 49, you'll see a summary. It's a 2-page summary of the changes that are happening in this ordinance. So unless you'd like me to, I'm not going to go through the entire ordinance and show you and describe every part. I'll just go highlight some of the main parts out of this summary on page 49. There's some clarification language as far as permit requirements and site plan requirements in Chapter 6. That's our building code. There's some language you'll find that we're clarifying some computational time as far as deadlines when things. Dr. Faison, it's page 49.
49.
Yes, sir. We've renumbered sections that were incorrectly numbered, so we're making some corrections there, and that might actually have some issue as far as meaning of text. So that's why they had to be included in this ordinance. Let's see. The Indian River City, we noticed that there were several omissions from the original 2012 adopted Indian River City zoning ordinance that were not carried over into our new code. So that's what we're correcting here. We're making sure we're carrying that over to this code. We also had some corrections to caterers, to the restaurant title. Multifamily dwellings adds a reference to the code about multifamilies where we had some omissions as well. So we found a few here and there omissions. Again, another example would be bed and breakfasts was omitted from the code update. So we're carrying that over from the original 2012 ordinance. Going on to page 50, the second page of the summary. Again, we're clarifying the IRC graphic printing and copying services, which was another omission. Outdoor storage. We're correcting outdoor storage requirements as a primary use, which were inadvertently mixed with outdoor storage as an accessory use. So we're making clarifications here. Accessory use table. We had in our zoning table a separate table or our zoning chapter rather, a separate table of just all the accessory uses that are allowed. Consolidates outdoor seating and outdoor seating with entertainment, corrects references to outdoor storage as an accessory use. Attached screen porch districts were permitted. That corrects the listing of districts where attached screen porches are permitted as accessory uses. That's pretty important. We deal with that section of the code a lot. We needed to make sure that that was clear. It wasn't some clarifications that we intended to put into code weren't carry over. Outdoor areas of seating. Consolidates requirements for outdoor areas of seating with outdoor areas of seating with entertainment. I'm going to skip down. Description of landscape yards. This was a pretty significant omission. We have required minimum depth of landscape buffers, but in our code we've called them landscape yards. And these yards are sometimes 20 feet if you're between a residential and a non-residential, 50 feet if you're along I-95, and so on. And you might have a landscape yard requirement along a major arterial on the front. Well, when we did a complete overhaul of the landscape code and we were really happy with it, it makes a lot of sense. It's easy for us, but even in that restructuring, we found some omissions, and we really wanted to correct this one here that there are several types of landscape yards and buffers. So we're adding an omission here. Commercial accessory structures and uses deletes duplicative sections. Design review criteria corrects the language to master plan. We still had old references to preliminary master plan, final master plan. We needed to get rid of those. We only have one master plan process. Final plat required. Deletes language moved to our, there were some duplications where we carried over language and then it was repeated again. And so we're deleting that language. And so that's the crux of some of the changes that we're proposing in this ordinance. I don't know if you had much time to go through it. I'll try and answer any questions you have, if you have any specific ones.
Okay. Let's open this to the public. And are there questions of staff? Okay. I have a few questions. On page 27, it's in blue. What's the blue mean when you have it in blue, not red? Does it matter?
You're talking about the underlined language?
Yeah.
Yeah, that language was...
Is it moved language or is it...
No, sir, that was omitted from the code. It's
old language that should have been in?
It should have been carried over to this new code.
Okay.
It was not.
And the reason why is I was asking, there's two things. Was the bed and breakfast one got me because it was like saying that there could only be one bed and breakfast and that's it. And I was like, yeah, okay. All right, so... And I think the other one was the print shops. I think that was in blue language too. 29.
Page 29? Okay.
Yeah, that was in blue language too. Okay. Never mind.
Okay.
That was all my questions. Are there any other questions? Vice Chairman.
I'm just curious. I'm sorry I didn't read this, but the number 3 on page 27, you just, that item in blue.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it says, I'm just curious, Indian River City neighborhood, residential zoning district, and bed and breakfast inn shall be limited to existing licensed bed and breakfast establishments, and expansion shall be limited to the existing licensed property. What exactly does that mean?
They do not want to see any more than which already exists.
That's what it sounds like.
Yes, sir.
So is there fill me in. Is there an abundance of bed and breakfasts? I mean, is there some problem?
I can't say how many exactly were there, but I know that when the community there worked with the staff several years ago to come up with an Indian River City plan, it was in reaction to some social services or transformation of the neighborhood that they were concerned about, commercialization of some parts of the neighborhood. And so they came to the staff asking for some relief, and we worked with them coming up with a study and working. I think we had we even had a committee working with the public there as well, to come up with a plan and come up with eventually this zoning district, this IRCN zoning district. And so it has some limitations, including the one that you just read, that bed and breakfasts will not be expanded any further than what they're already permitted there now.
So does that mean that somebody would have to go out of business, give up a license before someone else could come in and start a new bed and breakfast?
The way I read it is if there's a property that has an existing bed and breakfast on the property, it can continue to exist. They can continue on, but you can't create a new one. In other words, on another property, and you can't. It doesn't sound like you can expand even this original one here. So you're limited to what you have right there.
Okay, but you're talking about an individual owner that presently owns a bed and breakfast can't expand to another one. Not that somebody new who's not connected with that business, they could start a new bed and breakfast.
No, what I'm reading here, and we don't care about the owner or who the owner is. You have a bed and breakfast on that property. It's in operation. It can continue. It's just grandfathered, basically, so to speak. It can't expand in size, and it certainly can't establish. You can't establish a new one on another property inside that zoning district. That's how I read this. So,
You only want one bed and breakfast in the River City.
if there's one that exists and they have this language here, then that one can continue to exist, and that's the only one that can exist.
This language is being added back into the code to continue the grandfathering of any previously allowed bed and breakfasts that were allowed at the time of the ordinance. However, no new ones are allowed.
Correct. And this was originally approved in 2012.
Everybody knows where El Encito is? It's the one right behind that. The big sun on it, I think, and
That is it.
Soul,
That
something.
is the one and only.
I don't want to beat this horse to death, but I'm just curious, okay? So if someone has a large home, say there's a large place there, and it's ideal for a bed and breakfast, the answer is no?
Correct.
Wow. I didn't think you could do that.
Hey, they always have the option to make a request, right? But this is current code. That's why I didn't question it. It just got omitted, and that's why I was like, oh, okay. And they're just bringing it back in where it originally was.
Remember a group that was put together down in River City? Came up with some things that, they had vagrants that was all over that place, and they didn't want any more social services, agencies in.
Well, the only thing is, I've gone, when you're traveling around and you go to different cities, I mean, there's a half a dozen bed and breakfasts, or more in these cities where tourists popular.
Right next to each other.
And, it doesn't seem to be a competitive type of thing. If someone has a bed and breakfast that's really successful, people like to go there, great. And if they do a lousy job, people show up, don't show up.
There are bed and breakfasts are allowed in several zoning districts with certain limitations, certain conditions, currently in our code. That includes our single family and our multifamily zoning districts, including the GU. So,
But not in Indian River City.
in the
NGU.
Indian River City
Next to the
neighborhood,
cemetery.
they are allowed, but with that limitation that we just discussed. So if you have one existing, you can continue without.
And if you are new and you want to start one,
You cannot.
wow. I don't quite, I mean, I'll take your word for it, but I don't quite understand that. That doesn't make any sense, quite frankly.
Always petition that to go to the
Indian
courts.
River City
I guess so.
neighborhood.
This seems kind of odd.
Okay, so we've opened this to the public and closed this to the public, and it's back before the board to make a decision.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But somebody, is there any more questions or comments on this item? Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
I make a motion to approve ordinance number XX2017, code update glitch ordinance 2.0.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Can we take a roll call on this?
Member Ritchie?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir?
Yes.
Dr. Faison?
Yes.
Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay, so next we go to reports, right? Yep, reports.
The only thing I want to report is just to remind you about tomorrow night's vision workshop. I know it's late tonight, and hopefully we won't have a very late meeting tomorrow. It'll be pretty well structured with the consultant to do our kickoff visioning workshop with the public.
What time is that?
It's at 6 o'clock right here until 8 o'clock. I think it'll be really worthwhile for you to be there. We did a run through with the consultant on what they are going to do and prepare and present to the public, and we were quite impressed. And then 2 weeks from now, there will be a follow-up meeting. The consultant will show everybody the results of the surveys that he did with the public.
Do you have to go to the first meeting to go to the second meeting?
No.
Yeah, I actually told my wife that I'm interested in going, but I don't know if I can, but I may be there tomorrow. I'm more interested in the seawall workshops that you're. That's something that I know that we. Huh?
I think that there was a date set. I don't think it's been publicized yet, but we do have a workshop date tentatively set in December.
So one of the things that wasn't mentioned, that when we agreed to that and then went to council, what I didn't realize is that if you had an existing seawall, and I just didn't think about it because here's why. I have a seawall. Seawall for my development works great. Didn't realize that if something happened to my seawall, we would have to. Well, no, I guess I did because I talked about it. But the point is that I found out the cost to put in coquina is outrageous. They charge you like $100 and something, $80 or whatever a square foot. We have 1,200 feet, and
ours is all.
And so the other part of that was I didn't realize is where the natural part of that was coming from. And coquina is not natural to the shoreline. But, I mean, I could put concrete there, and that would be as natural as coquina. So I'm interested in that.
We'll get notified, right?
Yeah, you guys will notify us. Because that is something that's important. Plus, I was a little bit worried about vested rights for stuff like that too. So that, just a thought. All right. Any other reports? I didn't mean to. All right, Chelsea?
I have no report, thanks.
I think Mrs. Hare has a report.
I'm losing my voice. Mr. Lindman sent me a couple of them, and they're short, so I'll quickly share them with you. He said that Brevard Public Schools suffered no damage to the schools from Irma. So I thought that was interesting. And he said, please add that the schools and the district operations could not open until Monday, and so they were behind in getting the schools open. And then for today, yesterday, he sent me this. He said, we'd like to convey that the school board is taking input from the public regarding attendance boundary changes. There are 8 proposed attendance boundary changes, and there are surveys on the website. All the maps and the information can be found on the website. I pulled it up today. There is a large map there and also a survey. A link to the attendance boundary website can be found in the school tab under proposed 2018-19 attendance boundary changes. So for the people who have children in schools, they'd be interested in that. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Dr. Faison. Vice Chairman Shavir.
No report.
Member Ritchie.
I have no report, but is there anything still happening with the proposed convention center on US 1 near 405, just south of 405? They came before us, what, a year ago?
Well, I thought you guys were going to do I thought they were going to do a study for the park or something, that they put $30,000 for some type of research or something.
This was a hotel slash convention center.
I know some information, but I don't know enough to explain the status of it. I will certainly find out some information for you about what's going on, and we'll pass it on to you.
I mean, I just didn't know if it was still alive or if it was dead or.
We're talking about the property on the west side of US 1,
No, the east side of US 1.
in Sandpoint Park?
No, I'm talking south of 405.
Down south end of town.
South of 405, it was a hotel slash convention center.
Victor, where is it?
Near there, yeah.
Okay, yes, there was we did have an application, we did have a meeting with an applicant who may submit a site plan for a hotel and an outbuilding there in the Riverfront Center on a parcel there.
I think it's around that area, isn't it?
I
don't know if you were
apologize.
here when
I was
they-
confused with what you were asking, but yes, we did have a meeting with some people who were interested in submitting a site plan to do a hotel there in that center.
But it wouldn't be the Dream Hotel, that was some time ago.
No, this was a major change. No, this is down on US 1.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that too.
It was.
But yeah, years ago they proposed a lead hotel in that area, but that never took off. So at least I don't think it did. Would be kind of cool if it did, but didn't. So
I have a question.
Vice Chairman.
I have a question for you about Bay Towers. They look terrible. Can you bring us up to date? What's going on, Bay Towers?
Let's see, where do I start?
Just as a comment, I drove by there about 2 weeks ago before I went away, and there's drapes hanging out the window, windows open. It looks like, and it's been raining, and there's about, I don't know how many stories, look like the whole side of the north side of the building, the windows are open. I'm thinking, what?
The property's in disrepair, there's no question about that. The city has been working with the owner to try to come to a resolution and to get steps identified as to what's going to be done to correct that property. Of course, it's privately owned. The owner of the property has several attorneys that is working on his behalf to try to come to an amicable resolution. We don't have a resolution right now. There is hope that the city can come to terms with the owner for a resolution. Right now, the building official has a letter that has been sent to the owner condemning the building and demanding certain repairs be done within 60 days. That period ends November 24th, I believe. And at that time, the building official will have to take the next steps. That's regarding the condition of the property as it is today. With respect to my office and the negotiations that we are working on, there is a code enforcement case that we're working to resolve and settle from issues prior to Hurricane Irma. And we are trying to separate the issues from prior to Hurricane Irma with after Hurricane Irma, which is what the building official is working on. So there's a lot of different parties involved trying to get to resolution. But as of today, there is not a good resolution that I can report to you. I have several meetings in the past and in the future that are set, and we are continuing to work on this with the owner, but it's the owner's decision as to who he hires and what work is done under the owner's direction. If there's any other specific question I can answer, I'd be happy to try to answer that, but that's a summary of what I know about Bay Towers.
Is the building, north and south building, presently occupied?
Neither portion, no portion of the building is occupied at this
No
time.
portion of the building is occupied. So let me just ask, is that a curious, you may or may not know. Those were sold as condominiums, is that correct? Initially, after, I thought they were sold as apartments.
They were previously sold as condominiums, yes.
Okay, so those people that were there, I guess, what was the process in getting them out? The building's not safe, so you have to move, regardless of whether you own it or
As of May 2017, there was a transfer of title for this property, converting it back to apartments. And I don't know if that process is complete. I know it's a very lengthy process to convert from condos to apartments, but that was the step that was taken earlier this year. And the owner was required to get a vote from all of the shareholders of the condominium in order to proceed with the conversion back to apartments. I was not a party to that transaction. I just know what I'm told has happened and what has been recorded on the public record. The property appraiser now has this property as apartments.
Thank you.
I drive by there every day, and I see them working. They're working on it, and so I think they're making an effort to get into compliance. But I mean, I'm not in there, and so anyway.
Are the storage units still going into the old Kmart?
I don't want to say whether we have a site plan or not. I'd have to check with our staff to see if they've had a meeting. I did receive a call from someone who was interested in that building and potentially still going forward with converting the old Kmart building into indoor storage, and then also the parking lot in front somehow being subdivided into out parcels.
And the place there by the high school, there was going to be a Greek restaurant.
My understanding is there's some issues with the site plan, with the permit, and that the property owner has, or the applicant rather, has not fulfilled. Again, I can try and find out some more information for you and provide that to you.
It was in the paper that he said, I'm not doing it anymore, so. So it also said that he was going to eventually demolish it and levy it, but, so.
And one more, if I may. Okay. The Taco Bell building, the one that's half the building was.
That's it.
That's the one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So.
I wasn't sure you were talking about the same.
And then I only had one thing. So we've discussed parking in years past, and so I've noticed since we've reduced our parking standards, there's certain places that they don't have enough parking now. And I see them all lined up across the highway. And so I say to you, it might be something that we should revisit because, well, I mean, it's a hazard. When you don't have enough parking and you have a really good place, you create a hazard and somebody can get hurt. Just like, I feel like it's like passing a mini launch. You know, when you're going down US 1 and everybody's parked on the side of the roads, you know, during lunchtime, that's what I see. So, not naming names, but I think everybody can kind of figure it out. And that's because of how we did parking in that. So, and that's all I had. So, we're adjourned. Or I guess I got to open up the public or presentations for whatever it is, but nobody's here, so we're adjourned.
Thank you.